Chapter 1050. Not only was Zhang Xiaohua stunned, even Nun Jingyi, who was about to walk out of the small palace, frowned. She looked back at Zhang Xiaohua thoughtfully and nodded. Since Sakura asked you to stay here, then you will stay here? Yes, sect leader. Zhang Xiaohua agreed. When Abbess Jingyi left the palace, Sakura used his divine sense to scan the place. He snorted from his nose and waved his left hand. Several wisps of black gas flew out from his hand and landed on the floor of the palace, disappearing without a trace. Sakura then waved his right hand again and quickly threw out a red jade talisman. When the jade talisman landed on the floor, Sakura muttered something. After a long while, several wisps of black gas activated the restriction. A red light screen flashed and disappeared, covering the entire palace. Seeing Sakura's familiar technique and strange incantation, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but think the Tenryu sect is a demonic sect, and the cultivation method they practice is different from the way of immortality. Looking at Sakura's incantation, it is quite different from the way of immortality, but the technique is similar. I'm afraid the Tenryu sect made some improvements after the sharp decline of the chi of heaven and earth. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua staring at him, Sakura was also concerned. After he finished setting up the restriction, he said, "Yeah, about your experience, Ren Xiaoyao has already told me. It's really been hard on you." Then, Sakura seemed to be recalling something and said with a long tone, "Actually, when you left the small village and met Ren Xiaoyao for the first time, you were in the Tenryu sect?" Ah, Meng Qi was surprised. Why don't I have any impression of it? Hee, it's normal that you don't have any impression. Actually, since the previous saintess lived in seclusion, our sect has been looking for her because it involves a great secret of the Tenryu sect. This is bad. Why are you talking about the Tenryu sect's greatest secret in front of an outsider like me? Isn't this? Zhang Xiaohua was a little nervous. Her eyes darted around as if she was looking for a way to escape. In my Tenryu sect, Sakura has always been the leader, followed by the saintess, and then the other heavenly kings. But do you know why the saintess, who doesn't have high martial arts, has a higher status than the heavenly kings? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged. Meng also looked at him in puzzlement and asked Sakura, "May Heavenly King please dispel my doubts?" Because it's very simple. The husband chosen by the saintess is the Tenryu sect's next generation Sakura. The daughter of the saintess is the next saintess, Sakura said word by word, shocking Zhang Xiaohua and Meng so much that their mouths were wide open, not knowing what to do. In my Tenryu sect, there's always a saying. First, there's the saintess, then there's Sakura, then there's the heavenly kings. Therefore, the saintess is the root of my Tenryu sect's existence, and also the link of inheritance. But Meng wanted to speak, but was stopped by Di Shitian. Actually, there's no buts. Madam Aya, who is your mother, is the previous generation's saintess. This lord is the husband she chose, so this lord is Di Shitian. And you are the daughter of the previous generation's saintess, which is also this generation's saintess. In other words, you, Xiaoya, is this lord's daughter. Meng and Zhang Xiaohua had already heard it from Sakura's words. They didn't dare to believe it. It wasn't that they didn't guess Lady Aya's position in the Tenryu sect and Meng's position in the Tenryu sect, but they never thought that Meng was actually Sakura's daughter, and the so-called saintess, the extremely important saintess. And Sakura pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "If he's the husband you chose, then he's the next Sakura. Your daughter is the next saintess." Zhang Xiaohua was really speechless. He never thought that there would be a day when he could be Sakura. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved and he asked, "Lord Sakura, why are you so sure that we will definitely give birth to a daughter?" Ha ha ha, Sakura laughed and said, "It's not that I'm sure. It's just that the Tenryu sect has always been like this. The saintess will definitely give birth to a daughter." Then he said, "However, Ren Xiaoyao, your martial arts are extremely poor, and you don't have a trace of devil cultivation. What makes you Sakura? Didn't I say it just now? You still have to go to the Tenryu sect and cultivate properly. Only when your devil cultivation reaches a certain level can you be qualified to be Sakura. You have to know that Sakura is a symbol of status. All the Sakras in the Tenryu sect are the number one people in the pugilistic world, the number one people in the world. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, how can it be so powerful? Is there no exception? No, Sakura said proudly. The saintess's heavy responsibility is like this. As long as she chooses someone, that person will definitely be the number one person in the world. But Zhang Xiaohua thought of his second brother who was preparing to attack the Misty Peak. He couldn't possibly follow Sakura back to the Tenryu sect. Moreover, his cultivation was on the path of immortality, so how could he change to the path of devil cultivation? She could only find an excuse to decline. But I'm already so old. Even if I want to cultivate, I'm afraid it won't be possible. Sakura waved his hand. You don't have to worry about this. As long as the Tenryu sect is willing, you can go back to the Tenryu sect with me. I can definitely make you the number one person in the world. Then he smiled. Even if you can't cultivate in the end, I can just use the enlightenment technique and give you all my cultivation. What's so difficult about that? Meng knew Zhang Xiaohua's thoughts and interrupted. Heavenly King, Xiaoyao, if anything happens, don't make things difficult for him. It's fine if he doesn't go to the Tenryu sect for the time being. It's fine. Your matter isn't settled yet, and I'm also fine. As for the next Sakura, you don't have to decide so early. Sakura smiled, by the way. Since you already know how important the Saintess is to the Tenryu sect, you should also understand why the Tenryu sect is still brooding over your mother's seclusion and searching everywhere for her. About 10 years ago, the disciples who went out to search for your mother suddenly found traces of you. Although you were still young at that time, your face was exactly the same as your mother's. They could recognize you at a glance. You also know that compared to your mother, you're more important to the Tenryu sect. Therefore, after the disciples of the Tenryu sect couldn't find any trace of your mother, they brought you back to the Tenryu sect as if they had found a treasure. However, at that time, you were muddle-headed and it seemed like there was something wrong with your brain. This seat then sought out the divine doctor in the sect and the Jianghu's divine doctor to treat your illness. They treated you for about 5 years. 5 years ago, when your illness was about to be cured, you suddenly disappeared again. I sent people to search for you, but they couldn't find you at the place where you appeared last time. In these 5 years, it was as if you had evaporated, and there was no news of you. Hee, I didn't expect that you would be picked up by Jingxian and brought back to the Tenryu sect. Hee, the Tenryu sect did a good thing. Jingxian is also interesting. She actually wanted to take you in as an inner disciple. She's really shameless. I knew that you appeared in the Jianghu and even went to the Dalan temple to deliver the invitation to the Tenryu sect's martial arts convention. I immediately rushed over to take you back to the Tenryu sect. Ming sighed and nodded. I got it. On the way, Zhang Xiaohua and Ming discussed a lot. Ming knew that she was related to the Tenryu sect, so she knew that she couldn't stay in the Tenryu sect any longer. Now that she heard that she was the most important saintess of the Tenryu sect, Abbess Jingyi of the Tenryu sect, she didn't have the guts to take her in. She could only go back to the Tenryu sect. Moreover, the Tenryu sect was also her home in another sense. It was just that. Meng looked up at Zhang Xiaohua. The only thing she couldn't bear to part with was Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Meng and then looked at Sakura. She smiled and said, Meng, you should go back. Haven't you been looking for your family all this time? Now that it has finally come true, what's there to hesitate about? Moreover, if you miss me, or if I miss you, we can go to the Tenryu sect to see you. Upon seeing this, Sakura took out something from his bosom and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. He said, This is my token. If you come to the Tenryu sect, you only need to show this token. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took it. She felt a bone-piercing coldness. When she looked carefully, it was a piece of pitch-black iron with a faint flame engraved on it. In addition, you don't need to be the guardian disciple of the Tenryu sect anymore. I already know about what happened in the Dalan temple. Abbess Jingyi must have other plans for you to be the guardian disciple. The Tenryu sect's cultivation method is immortal cultivation method, so it's not suitable for you. And this one knows. This one came down to the Tenryu sect for Ming. Since Ming has left, there's no point in the Tenryu sect staying. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. At this time, The Tenryu sect didn't have any disciples of the Misty School in Ming, so he naturally wouldn't stay. All right, Ren Xiaoyao, I'll take you back to the Tenryu sect in a while. You can talk to her. At this time, where was the appearance of the most powerful person in the world? He was now the image of a loving father. After he finished speaking, Indra removed the restriction around him and walked out without looking back. Xiaohua. Meng pulled Zhang Xiaohua's hand and whispered, You really don't want to go back to the Tenryu sect with me? Zhang Xiaohua held Meng's hand and nodded. You also know, I do have some things to do. After I'm done with them, I'll go to the Tenryu sect to find you, okay? I know. I'll wait for you. You can treat the illness, but you can't treat it until you forget about me. How can I? Meng smiled and said, Even if I forget everything in the world, I'll never forget you. That's right. Don't forget, I still want to be the Tenryu sect's lord. Xiaohua. Meng's face was abnormally red. She peeked to see that there was no one in the hall and threw herself into Zhang Xiaohua's arms, holding him tightly in her arms. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to cast a recommendation vote or monthly vote. -4. Chapter 1051. After some time, there was a coughing sound at the entrance of the temple. Zhang Xiaohua and Dream turned around to see Peacock and Chun Chun standing outside. Peacock and Chun Chin's expressions were different. Peacock's face was cold like frost. She was already cold to begin with, and now she was even more unapproachable. However, Chun Chun bit her lips. Her eyes were filled with indignation and even a trace of provocation. Her chest rose and fell slightly as if she was feeling aggrieved. Cough, cough. Zixiano, I should call her Xiaoya. I really didn't expect that the usually obedient little tail behind me was actually the saintess of the dragon sect. How come I didn't see it at all? Chun Chin coughed and said, Ren Xiaoyao, you have good taste. No wonder after taking advantage of Nye Xiaoyao from the Rejuvenation Valley, you immediately wiped your mouth and denied it. So you have already noticed Zixia. She's not ordinary. Now that you've climbed the coattails of the Tenryu sect saint, can you be proud? Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely. Chun Chun was a straightforward person, but he did not mean any harm. Although everything in the refining heart cave was just an illusion, Zhang Xiaohua still had a good impression of Chun Chun and Peacock. Therefore, when he heard this, he did not think much of it. Instead, he felt like he was being jealous, like a wife being jealous of her husband. Zhang Xiaohua laughed dryly and said, Senior Chun, what are you saying? Even you didn't see it. How could I see it clearly? I just like Ming. Why would I care if she's a commoner, a disciple of the incense cult, or the saint of the Tenryu sect? You know that although I know Nye Qianyu, but it was after I met Ming. I have never hidden anything about Nye Qianyu from her. Ming was also a little embarrassed. She got out of Zhang Xiaohua's arms, but still held onto Zhang Xiaohua's hand and nodded. Little. Xiaoyao is right. I've seen Nye Qianyu in the Sorrow City, and I know everything. Senior Chun, don't talk about this boring topic. As for the saint of the Tenryu sect, I don't need to explain. I'm sure Senior Chen knows better than Senior Chun what I was like when I first came to the Tenryu sect. Even now, I can't remember whether I'm the saint of the Tenryu sect or not. Of course, since Disher Tian said so, I don't think it's wrong. However, during the 5 years I have been in the incense cult, other than Master, that is, Senior Sister Chun has cared a lot about me. I still have to thank Senior Sister Chun. After that, Ming let go of Zhang Xiaohua's hand and bowed. Chun Chun knew Ming's identity and naturally felt that she had been deceived. Moreover, Ming's identity made her feel that she could not compare with her. This kind of gap made her feel extremely uncomfortable, so she felt that it was unfair. At this moment, after hearing Ming's words and thinking about the helplessness and confusion she felt when she first came here, she felt relieved. She stepped forward and said, Forget it. Forget it. You're just a junior. If I don't take care of you, who will take care of you? But just as she took a step forward, she was pulled back by Peacock. Chin Chin turned back and asked curiously, Senior Chun, what's wrong? Peacock said to Ming, I didn't know your identity before, so I could call you Senior Chun. But now, you are no longer Xia of the Emotian Palace, but Ye of the Tenryu sect. This is a big difference. Although we've been in the 5 sects for thousands of years, but your cult isn't an immortal. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths can't make plans together. In the future, we have to be clear about this. Of course, if you can remember the time you spent at Lingxiang Peak and take care of the incense cult in the future, then both of us will be very grateful. When Chen Chun heard this, she was already depressed and stopped in her tracks. Yes, their status had been confirmed. Xia was no longer the Xia of the past. The difference between immortals and demons, the difference in their identities, the difference in their sects, they were all standing in front of Meng and Chen Chen. It was impossible for them to go back to how they were before. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she also sighed. Meng didn't seem to understand and didn't know how to explain it. From Wan Wuxin, Zhang Xiaohua knew that the Tenryu sect was created by the ancient Sakura. It was a branch of the demon sect that fed on immortals and was a mortal enemy of immortals. Of course, the demon sect and the demon sect were both rebuilt. The demon sect's Sakura must have considered this problem when he created the Tenryu sect and passed down the martial arts. However, the difference between immortals and demons still existed. Moreover, when the way of immortals was annihilated 10,000 years ago, the way of diabolism was also affected. The way of martial arts flourished, and the relationship between the way of immortals and diabolism was already somewhat blurred. In this martial arts society convention, the way of diabolism, sat together with way of immortals, way of diabolism, and by Yinxiu instead of facing each other with weapons. From this, it could be seen that the two ways of diabolism had changed. Perhaps the two ways of diabolism were not enemies of each other. Then again, the immortal path was the immortal path and the demonic path was the demonic path. There was a fundamental difference between the two. With the rise of the immortal path, the demonic path would surely undergo changes as well. How could Dream, Qinqian, or Peacock be able to control these changes? Perhaps drawing a clear line and treating the other party coldly was the best way to go. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua reached out to hold Meng's hand and said with a smile, "No matter where you are, what happened has happened, and happy times have been. Maybe you can't call Senior Sister Chen Senior Sister now, but after all, you used to call her that. So, you just need to keep it in your heart. Regardless of the vicissitudes of the world and whether people have changed, you just need to guard your heart." I know. Meng's expression softened. Zhang Xiaohua said gently also, "Remember this. No matter who you are, I have set my mind on you. Even if you run to the ends of the earth and become a beggar, I will still pursue you." Meng blushed and looked at Qinshan and Peacock who were not far away. She spat at Zhang Xiaohua and whispered, "Can't you say this one? It's not like I haven't heard it before." And in front of the two senior sisters? When Peacock and Chen Qian heard that Meng still addressed them as two senior sisters, they felt relieved. However, when they heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, their hearts ached. Zhang Xiaohua giggled and said, no way, I want to say this every day, all the time. I want to say it to you, to everyone in the world." Sigh, how shameless. Chun Chun was jealous for no reason. "Junior brother Ren, don't try to make the saint happy. The hierarch has invited you." "Yes, I understand. Please lead the way, senior sisters." Zhang Xiaohua's face stiffened and immediately put on a serious face and said righteously, "Making the saint happy is my next life's mission. If the hierarch summons me, I will have to put it aside for now." Meng laughed and pinched Zhang Xiaohua's hand. "Ren Xiaoyao, you bastard." Qinshan laughed and pointed at Zhang Xiaohua without any demeanor. Peacock could not hold it in anymore and laughed. Then, with a straight face, she turned and left. When Meng and Zhang Xiaohua followed the two to Huayu Palace, there was no one else in the palace. The Tenryu sect was here and the world's #1 martial artist, Sakura, was here. Who would dare to stay in the palace for a moment longer? At this moment, there were only 2 chairs on the platform. Sakura and Nanjing each sat on one, while the others stood on both sides. Nanjing Fan, Nun Shuizhen, and several consecrators had also arrived. Besides Sakura, Garuda and the others were also standing quietly. Meng came to the platform, hesitated for a moment, and still bowed to Nun Jing-yi. Nun Jing-yi quickly turned her body slightly and said with a smile, "Congratulations to ya for finding out her identity. I didn't work in vain these years. I hope that if there is a chance in the future, you will take care of me more. This disciple, thanks, Nun Jing-yi, for taking care of me these years. If there is a chance in the future, I will never forget these years of kindness." Nun Jing-yi was elated and said, "That's great. My junior sister Jing Xian didn't bring you back in vain because of fate." "Oh, Nun Jing-yi, I still want to go to Lingxiang Peak to pay my respects to Master before I leave." Meng hesitated for a moment and said, "Hee, there's no need. As long as you have junior sister Jing Xian in your heart, where can't you pay your respects? If you don't have her in your heart, even if you pay your respects every day, what does that mean?" Nun Jingyi rejected without any trace of politeness. Sigh, Meng sighed slightly and nodded. "Nun Jingyi is right. All right, Jingyi. My heavenly dragon cult has accepted your invitation to spread the incense cult and will definitely repay you in the future. This seat will now bring the saintess back." Sakura Jiao Meng didn't like it and continued, "Respectfully send Sakura off." Nun Jingyi also hoped that Sakura would leave early. However, when Sakura stood up and saw Zhang Xiaohua beside Meng, he said, "That's right. Just now we were talking about ya and forgot about Ren Xiaoyao. This Ren Xiaoyao came to your Tenryu sect for less than a year and also hasn't practiced the martial arts of your Tenryu sect. It's fine if he doesn't become a guardian disciple." Nun Jingyi looked at Zhang Xiaohua and frowned slightly. She said, "Ren Xiaoyao indeed hasn't practiced the martial arts of my Tenryu sect, but this guardian disciple, he can also become one. He might have a bright future ahead of him." Nun Jingyi's words indeed hasn't practiced the martial arts of my Tenryu sect were quite forceful. She even looked at Zhang Xiaohua, as if she was hinting something. Who knew? Zhang Xiaohua only looked at Ming, as if she didn't understand at all. Nun Jingyi saw that Sakura was a little unhappy. Although she was unwilling, she could only say, "Of course, if the Tenryu sect has any better arrangements, I think it would also be excellent." Zhang Xiaohua heard these words clearly. She moved her gaze away from Ming's face and took out his waist token. She handed it over and said emotionally, "Esteemed leader, Ron is untalented. After coming to the Misty School for more than a year, esteemed leader has taken good care of me, and I'm really grateful. It's just that Ron is small and weak, and his martial arts are also low. Even if he wants to do something for the Tenryu sect, he has the will but not the power. Therefore, I can only remember the kindness of the Tenryu sect in my heart and strive to remember it at all times and every day." Nun Jingyi felt powerless after hearing this. She waved her hand and let Qin Shun put away Zhang Xiaohua's waist token. "Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote recommendation and monthly. -4. Chapter 1052. At the beginning of the silver moon, at the foot of Huayu Peak, Indra brought Meng along to bid farewell to the people of Fragrance Cult. Meng whispered to Zhang Xiaohua, Aren't you going to the Tenryu sect with me?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly in his heart. He was on the path of immortality, which was poles apart from the Tenryu sect. Why would he go to the Tenryu sect? Could he really be the Sakura? Moreover, this Indra was an expert of the demonic path, and his magical powers were unimaginable. Although he had temporarily concealed his cultivation and didn't let him know, he couldn't guarantee that he would be exposed after a long time. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua also had his own plans. The Tenryu sect was established on the path of the demonic path, and they didn't covet the path of immortality. Although he didn't know why Indra collected the immortal relics, it was safer to expose his immortal secrets in front of Indra if it was exposed. However, one may know a person's face but not his heart. Who knew what Indra was thinking? Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to put his life in the hands of others, even if he felt that he wasn't inferior to Indra in terms of flying techniques. "You also know that I have other things to do. When I have some progress, I'll go to the Tenryu sect to see you." Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to hold Ming's hand in front of everyone. Ming nodded. She knew that these things couldn't be said clearly, so she forced a smile and said, "Then remember to come and see me quickly. Or wait until I'm done with the Tenryu sect's matters. I'll go and see you too." But Meng wanted to ask where to find Zhang Xiaohua, but when she said that, she felt that it was inappropriate, so she changed her words. "You and I help each other in times of need. Don't forget each other in your heart." After saying that, Meng took the initiative to hold Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Her eyes were a little moist, and she said, "Be careful, take care, and think of me." "I will." Zhang Xiaohua also forced a smile and held her hand even tighter. Not far away, Abbess Jingyi said, "Sakura, it's already late now. Why don't you rest at my fragrant cult for a night and set off tomorrow?" "Ha ha ha," Sakura laughed and said, "Even if I want to rest, I don't need to preach at your place. If I were here, would your incense cult be stable?" Nanjing Yi secretly curled her lips. "He's quite tactful. All right, yeah, come with me." Sakura also didn't talk to Nanjing Yi anymore. His figure floated up and he pulled Ming's hand. "Although the martial world is big, there will always be a time when we meet again. There's no need to care about a momentary love." Then, with a pull, the two of them flew up at the same time. They were about 30 feet above the ground and quickly flew in the direction of Dianchi Lake. "Our hearts are connected, and the world is boundless." A voice floated down from the night sky. "Help each other in times of need." Zhang Xiaohua almost floated up and shouted loudly. Seeing that Sakura had left, Garuda and the others also bid farewell to Abbess Jingyi and walked past Zhang Xiaohua. Although they didn't show absolute respect, their eyes were full of kindness as they nodded at him. It was as if they loved the house and its crow. Zhang Xiaohua's mood was complicated. She nodded with a smile. When she saw Qin Shiyue and Su Jiaodong, she couldn't help but be stunned. Seeing this, Qin Shiyue rolled her eyes and cupped her hands. "Ren Xiaoxia, you look very familiar. I wonder, have we met before?" Zhang Xiaohua's expression immediately returned to normal. She smiled and said, "This? Senior Martial Brother. What's your name? I've never seen a disciple of the Tenryu sect before, but where have I met Senior Martial Brother?" Qin Shiyue was slightly stunned. She turned to look at Su Jiaodong and said with a smile, "My name is Qin Shiyue. I'm Garuda Heavenly King's direct disciple." "Oh, Senior Martial Brother Qin." Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands. "Junior, Senior Martial Brother Ren, I met someone who looked exactly like you 5 years ago. It's just that that person was very young and shorter than you. When I saw Junior Brother Ren just now, I almost thought that I was back in time 5 years ago." "Eh, really?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. "What's that person's name? Where did you meet him?" "Hee hee, what a coincidence. That person is also called Ren Xiaoyao. I met him at Shitsue Mountain near Pingyang City." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohua looked incredulous. "Is there really such a thing?" "Hee hee, I happen to have nothing to do. I'll go to Pingyang City to see if I can meet this guy who has the same name and looks as me." Then, she asked again, "By the way, Senior Martial Brother Qin, where is this Pingyang City?" This? Qin Shiyue was helpless. She simply pointed in the direction of Pingyang City and said, "It's very far from here. Junior Brother Ren won't go there out of boredom, right?" "Maybe. I'm just curious." Zhang Xiaohua did not comment. "All right, Junior Brother Ren. I'll take my leave. I'll be waiting for you in the Tenryu sect now. I wish you." "Hee hee, Junior Brother Ren, you know." After Garuda and the others had left, Zhang Xiaohua stepped forward and bowed. "Sir Leader, don't, Ren Xiaoyao. You're no longer a disciple of the fragrant cult. It's inappropriate to call you Sir Leader." Nanjing Yi waved her hand and said coldly, "Hee hee." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "This disciple has always been under Lord Leader's care ever since I came to the Incense Order to search for my dreams. Although Lord Leader thinks this disciple is inappropriate, this disciple still wishes to call you Lord Leader in my heart." Nanjing Yi listened quietly and did not say anything. Zhang Xiaohua continued, "Actually, it's useless to say anything now. I didn't know that things would develop to this stage. Even if I wanted to stay in the fragrant cult, Sir Leader wouldn't allow it. So, I can only leave. In addition, let's not talk about Sir Cult Leader's grace. Just Senior Nun Jing Xian's life-saving grace is engraved in this disciple's heart. In the future, if the incense cult needs this disciple, please tell me. This disciple will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. You're better off saying that than singing, Chen Chun said secretly. You won't even tell me where you're going. Even if the fragrant cult needs you, where can I find you? Chun Chun, Peacock scolded. Don't you know you have a mouth? Chun Chun felt wronged. It's true. He's gone. Where can I find him? Peacock's heart skipped a beat. Senior Sister Kong, Senior Sister Chun, don't worry. With the fragrant cult's methods, how could they not know where Ren is? All right, I appreciate your kindness. But the fragrant cult has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Who knows how many difficulties and obstacles we've encountered. We've never asked for help from outsiders. Nun Jingyi waved her hand. Ren Xiaoxia, if there's nothing else, please leave the fragrant cult as soon as possible. Seeing that Nun Jingyi had ordered him to leave, Zhang Xiaohua nodded helplessly. I'll leave now. But in order not to be with the Tenryu sect, I'll leave later than them. I'll go to Jinghai Lake tomorrow morning. Ren Xiaoxia, there's no need to panic. Hearing that Zhang Xiaohua did not want to leave with the Tenryu sect, Nun Jingyi's tone softened. Although the Tenryu sect is powerful now, and its strength is unparalleled in the world, but it's still a demonic cult. It's not the right path to immortality. Ren Xiaoxia was born with superhuman strength and a kind heart. If he can enter the path of immortality through martial arts, I'm sure he'll have a place in Jianghu one day. With such a bright future ahead of him, why should he submit to the demonic cult? Seeing that Nun Jingyi was trying to rope him in, Zhang Xiaohua secretly curled his lips. If Di Shitian had heard this, he would have laughed his head off. This might be useful to others, but if Zhang Xiaohua were to submit to the Tenryu sect, then he would be the next Di Shitian, much more honorable than Peacock and Chen Chun. If not for the fact that Zhang Xiaohua was already an immortal, would he not have followed them? However, Zhang Xiaohua still smiled. Nun, you're right. I'll consider it seriously. After that, he bowed to Peacock and Chun Chun. I'd like to thank both of you for bringing me here from Rejuvenation Valley. I'm afraid I won't have the chance to say this again in the future. Peacock and Chun Chin's hearts ached for no reason. They both whispered, You have to be careful. The Jianghu is dangerous. You have to be careful. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua raised his head. The mountains will not change and the rivers will flow forever. I hope we'll meet again in the future. After that, he leaped onto the David's deer, patted Huan's protruding horn and walked straight along the mountain path. The tall and thin shadow was dragged along by the full moon, winding along the ground. It was incomparably lonely. Nun Jingyi and the rest had already turned around and returned to Huayu Peak. Peacock and Chen Chun were still standing there, looking at the gradually disappearing figure. No one knew what they were thinking. When Peacock came back to her senses, Nun Jingyi and the rest were already far away. Peacock's heart trembled. She reached out to pull Chen Chun, who was still grieving, and walked a few steps to catch up with them. However, after a few steps, she could not help but turn back to look. Usually, although they did not meet often, she knew that he was in Emo Xian's palace on Lingxiang Peak. She always felt a sense of security. However, now that she had to leave and perhaps they would not meet again, she knew that this person had been imprinted in her heart. Zhang Xiaohua went down Huayu Peak and walked along the mountain path. On the mountain path, there were disciples from various sects in the Jianghu, as well as the inner disciples of Ruijin Palace. The cult of fragrance had been established for thousands of years. Everything in the cult had long been mysterious. Many people who came to participate in the martial arts convention wanted to see what was going on. They did not dare to stay in Huayu Palace, but they still wanted to stay in the cult of fragrance for a few days. Since the martial arts convention was over, there would be a few days for them to go out. Zhang Xiaohua found an opportunity to ride the David's deer down the mountain path. He threw Huan to one side and then concealed himself. He used the flying spell and flew towards the direction of Lingxiang Peak. However, before he had even traveled halfway, he suddenly stopped and stood on the clouds. He had a strange expression on his face as he alternated between looking forward and left. It was as if there was something strange in those two places. After waiting for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Zhang Xiaohua's face lit up with joy. He whistled and flew down. When he landed about 50 feet from the ground, there was a black shadow coming from the direction of Lingxiang Peak. It was like a gust of wind, rushing towards Zhang Xiaohua. On the left of Zhang Xiaohua, there was also a black shadow. It was like a bolt of lightning and was even faster. It was also coming towards Zhang Xiaohua's direction. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please keep it. Please tip me. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1053. Ha ha ha, little yellow? Little black? Zhang Xiaohua stood in the air with a big smile on her face. Her heart was filled with warmth, and the sadness from the dream's departure was greatly reduced. In less than half an incense stick's worth of time, Goldie was the first to arrive. It stopped when it was about 1 zhang away from Zhang Xiaohua. Its tail, which was larger than its entire body, swung gently behind its back as it floated in the air. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly heard a faint voice in her heart. Mother, is that you? Zhang Xiaohua's face revealed an awkward expression, and she did not know how to answer. She could only curse in her heart, this little brat, I was originally a man. How did I become your mother? But at this moment, Little Yellow seemed to have understood. Its small eyes were filled with joy, and with a swish of its tail, it landed on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder with a whoosh. Its 2 small claws hugged Zhang Xiaohua's head intimately, but this intimacy caused Zhang Xiaohua's hair to become a mess. Zhang Xiaohua felt Little Yellow's affection and also reached out her hand, affectionately stroking Little Yellow's body. Little Yellow enjoyed it very much, and its small head rubbed against Zhang Xiaohua's hand again and again. Woof! A black shadow also flew over, and like Little Yellow, it also stopped about 10 feet away. Zhang Xiaohua felt a voice in her heart shouting, Father, is that you? Little Yellow flew over with a whoosh and directly pounced on Little Black, causing Little Black to fall to the ground. Although Little Black's body was larger than Little Yellow's, it was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Little Black then angrily barked and stood up again. Its small claws slapped Little Yellow's face, causing Little Yellow to sway. Little Yellow also could not take it anymore, and swung its large tail, hitting Little Black's face. Little Black barked, as if it was in pain. Oh no! Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Could it be that the two of them don't know each other? Thinking about it, since these two things were born, although they had always been in his arms, they had never opened their eyes. How could they know each other? Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly flew to the two things. Just as she was about to separate them, a voice rang out in her heart. I said it's Daddy, so it's Daddy. How can it be Mommy? Yes, Mother. I've always called her that. You're mistaken. That's right. It's Daddy. It's Daddy. I'm the one who should be called Mother, Mother. Gosh, Zhang Xiaohua finally understood. So, the two little things were fighting because of this. Zhang Xiaohua stood there, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She waited for the two little things to have enough fun. One of the little things stood on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder, and it kept making noise in its heart. Daddy, quickly tell it that you're Daddy. The other one was not convinced. Mommy, quickly tell it that you're Mommy. If it was a direction, perhaps Zhang Xiaohua could use her hands. If it was to eat, perhaps Zhang Xiaohua could use her hands. But her mother and father, these two, Zhang Xiaohua really did not know how to explain it to them. After thinking for a while, she stretched out her hand and patted them on the head. The left nodded, and the right nodded. And it was quite effective. The two little things were quiet, thinking that Zhang Xiaohua had agreed with them. AI, my heart is finally at peace. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Then, she looked at the sky, and Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense. She found the bottom of a cliff and took out the jade talisman. After setting up the restriction, she sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. As for the two little things, when they saw the starlight falling, they were delighted. Each of them floated in a strange position beside Zhang Xiaohua. A lot of the starlight was also absorbed into their bodies. When she woke up in the morning, she saw Xiao Huang and Xiao He chasing each other in the air and playing on the ground. Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with sunshine. Then, she frowned again, as if she had forgotten something. After a while, she suddenly patted her forehead and took out 2 small vitality stones. The moment she took out the vitality stones, Xiao Huang and Xiao He immediately sensed it and flew over. They floated beside Zhang Xiaohua's hand and looked at it greedily. Hee. Zhang Xiaohua stretched out her hand and handed the vitality stones to the 2 little things. Xiao Huang and Xiao He looked at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua nodded, and the 2 little things somersaulted in the air. Then, Xiao Huang emitted a white light from his nose and slowly sucked the vitality stones in. Xiao He also emitted a white light from his mouth and swallowed the vitality stones. Do you want more? Zhang Xiaohua thought and took out 2 more vitality stones. But this time, the 2 little things only sniffed with their noses and shook their heads slightly. Well, I think they are full. Zhang Xiaohua put away the vitality stones and put the 2 little things on her shoulders. She floated in the air and looked in the direction of Lingering Fragrance Peak, thinking about something. She wanted to go to Lingering Fragrance Peak last night because she wanted to take advantage of the time when Nanjing Yi and the others were at Huayu Peak. She wanted to see if she could refine the stone tablet and then see if there were any benefits. However, she was delayed by the 2 little things. She was afraid that it would be inconvenient for her to go now. She guessed that the disciples of Ruijin Palace would be on high alert during the day and she might alarm them. Forget it. I got a lot of good things from Lingering Fragrance Cult. That stone tablet. I will leave it to Nanjing Yi. Zhang Xiaohua made up her mind and flew back to Huayu Peak. When they found Huan, the 4 odd beasts were immediately scared witless by Xiao Huang and Xiao He. They ran far away and did not dare to come close. What should I do? Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. She remembered that when Xiao Huang and Xiao He were young, she had taken them to ride the 4 odd beasts. Helpless, Zhang Xiaohua pointed at the 4 odd beasts in the air and said in her heart, "You too, fly up first and follow me. We will talk when we get out." The 2 little things were quite obedient. She did not know whether they understood what she said or what they saw. Anyway, they flew up. Then, Zhang Xiaohua led the 4 odd beasts over and rode them towards Dianqi Lake. The 2 little things flew very fast. Their figures hid in the forest and were not discovered by others. After a few days, Zhang Xiaohua finally arrived at Jinghai Lake. These few days, Zhang Xiaohua had long wanted to fly out. But after thinking about it, she was now a person that Nanjing Yi cared about. If she did not let people watch her leave, or if she left at a normal speed, Nanjing Yi would definitely be suspicious. She might even send people to Lingering Fragrance Cult to look for her. Therefore, she patiently rode the 4 odd beasts to Jinghai Lake. Zhang Xiaohua was no longer a guardian disciple. It seemed that Nanjing Yi's decree had also reached Jinghai Lake. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua's performance in the martial arts convention had also spread to Jinghai Lake along with the departure of the people of Jianghu. Therefore, although the disciples of Lingering Fragrance Cult were not as respectful as before, they still had smiles on their faces. They obviously treated Zhang Xiaohua differently from the disciples of other sections. At least, when they were riding the boat at Jinghai Lake, Zhang Xiaohua had enjoyed preferential treatment. When they got ashore, Zhang Xiaohua was a little worried. She found the disciple of Ruijin Palace who was on duty at Dianqi Lake and invited him to a secluded place. She used her enchanted finger to ask for information about the disciples of Misty School. Then, she rode the 4 odd beasts and left. The disciples of Misty School left more than a month ago, right after Ming and I left the Dalan Temple. At that time, the entire Jianghu did not know that Lingering Fragrance Cult had opened its doors. I'm afraid that not only the Righteous Alliance, but the other sects also did not know that Misty School had left. Zhang Xiaohua rode on Huan's back and thought to herself, moreover, the opening of Lingering Fragrance Cult's doors was also out of Nanjing Yi's expectations. How could she make the decision to let Misty School leave Lingering Fragrance Cult in such a short time? Could it be that she was not afraid that Misty School would leave and never return? Sigh. This Nanjing Yi is indeed powerful. She is indeed the leader of Lingering Fragrance Cult. I think she had already planned for this. Moreover, she had taken into account the various reactions of Misty School. The opening of Lingering Fragrance Cult's doors was just a preemptive opportunity for her. If she did not have this opportunity, she would have taken action in another year or so. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and thought to herself, perhaps I don't need to think so much. When I see second brother, I just need to ask him. Second brother has already left for more than a month. I took more than 2 months to travel from Pingyang City to Macho City. It took me more than 10 days to travel from Macho City to Lingering Fragrance Cult. However, if second brother and the rest went directly from Lingering Fragrance Cult to Pingyang City, I'm afraid it would take less than 2 months. However, there are more than 1,000 of them. They would have to cover their tracks as they travel, so it would not be much faster. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua had already left Lingering Fragrance Cult. There were still many people from the pugilistic world on the road. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine perception to scan the area and saw that Little Black and Little Yellow had already bypassed Yanqi Lake and were running in her direction. She frowned as she looked at the odd beast beneath her. If she rode on the odd beast, it would take her at least a month to reach Pingyang City. By then, the battle between Misty School and the Righteous Alliance would have already ended. She would not be able to help second brother at all, much less protect him. She could only use her flying skill to catch up with the Misty School disciples. However, what should Huan Huan do? Suddenly, Huan Huan panicked and ran towards the forest beside the mountain path. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Needless to say, Little Black and Little Yellow had arrived in midair. However, as soon as he arrived at the forest, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. The odd beasts had been captured by the Pill Sprouting Hall's disciples on Tianmu Peak, but they had still managed to escape. No one had been able to find any trace of them. If he left them here, he might be able to find them safely. Zhang Xiaohua jumped down from Huan Huan's back and took the bag. She patted the odd beast's bald head and smiled. Huan Huan, I have something urgent to attend to and cannot take care of you for the time being. You find a place to hide first. When I'm done with my business, I'll come and find you again. How about that? Please vote for me. Please add me to your collection. Please tip me. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1054. However, before Huan Huan could say anything, 2 faint shadows descended from the sky. The odd beast let out a low howl and scurried into the forest, not daring to bother with Zhang Xiaohua anymore. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Although she was reluctant to part with the odd beasts and felt sorry for Ji Xiaohua who shared the same name as her, but her second brother's life was more important, so she had no choice but to give it up. With a wave of her hand, Xiao Huang and Xiao He each took one of her shoulders. Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal to hide her figure, then she soared into the sky, looking towards the north, and flew straight over. Zhang Xiaohua flew extremely fast. In less than 4 hours, she arrived at an unfamiliar place. It was a desolate place with few people. While she was flying, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to have sensed something, so she used her divine sense to look down. She saw dozens of groups of more than 100 people looking for a faintly discernible path in the mountain range and moving forward. Aren't they people from the Tenryu sect? Why did I meet them? Could it be that the Tenryu sect is also in the north? Zhang Xiaohua seemed to know why she sensed something, but Sakura and Meng were obviously not in the group. Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to look carefully. Just as she was about to withdraw her divine sense, a woman suddenly jumped out of the group. She came to the side of the mountain path in a few leaps and poked her head out to look at the deep cliff. She shouted, Garuda, if you don't let me go, I will jump down now. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over. Wasn't this woman Zhang Pinger? She was surprised. Why is she here? Could it be that Garuda kidnapped her? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua was furious. Zhang Pinger and him, although one had feelings for each other and the other was heartless, Zhang Pinger had brought Zhang Xiaohua from Shixin Peak to Lingxiang Peak. She was also someone whom Zhang Xiaohua was grateful to. How could she let Zhang Pinger be bullied? She waved her hand, and Zhu Ming took action to protect herself. Then, she covered her figure and breath and slowly descended. Xiao Huang and Xiao He stopped in the air far away. Miss Zhang, why are you doing this? Garuda's lazy voice was heard. Then, he seemed to take it very seriously. He slowly walked out of the crowd and said with a smile, now that things have come to this, why do you still want to seek death? If you don't want to pass down the incense cult, how can I take you from Abish Jingyi? What does this mean? Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly as she hid at the side. Garuda, you think I don't know? If you hadn't used the Tenryu sect to force me to spread the incense cult, how could I have ended up like this? When Garuda heard this, he immediately stopped and said seriously, Miss Zhang, I have already made my intentions clear a few days ago. You are really important to me, so I can only ask for you directly? Hee. Besides, if the incense cult's Abbess Jingyi really cares about you, how can I just threaten her and send you away? Zhang Pinger's face paled, but then she gritted her teeth and said, Garuda, no matter what you say, I still don't want to. Don't come any closer, or I'll jump off the cliff and we'll go our separate ways. Garuda didn't care, and took 2 more steps forward. Seeing that Zhang Pinger really did move a little further away, he stopped and sneered, If you don't want to, why didn't you say so earlier in Huayu Palace? You followed me all the way here, and now you're showing your true feelings? Zhang Pinger also sneered, In Huayu Palace, I was a disciple of the incense cult. The Fire Temple Master was my master. How can I not listen to her? Abbess Jingyi is the head of the incense cult. How can I resist? It's different here. Since I left Deity Lake, I'm no longer a disciple of the incense cult. Who can order me around? It's a good idea, Garuda said, but aren't you afraid that I'll go back and kill the incense cult on a whim? I've already told you. The incense cult is the incense cult, and Zhang Pinger is Zhang Pinger. From the moment I left Deity Lake, I've already made a clear distinction between kindness and hatred. Even if your Tenryu sect destroys the incense cult, it has nothing to do with me. Good. This character is exactly what I want. Garuda gave her a thumbs up. I didn't expect you to be so compatible with my character. But Miss Zhang, you're all alone now. Even if I let you go, where can you go? I only need to announce your escape. Well, I don't need to announce it. I just need to tell the incense cult. They'll take care of their reputation and capture you. They'll either kill you or send you to the Tenryu sect. Do you think there's still a place for you in Jianghu? Moreover, if you follow me, even if you lose your martial arts, I swear that I'll never let you down. I'll let you live happily for the rest of your life. What do you think? Sigh. Zhang Pinger looked at Garuda and then at the incense cult. She shook her head and said, I've already left my happiness in Lihua Temple. He's the only one who can give it to me in this world. Even if you have my body, you can't have my heart. Who is he? Tell me. I'll drag him out of the incense cult. I only care about your body. If you're willing, you can live happily with him in the Tenryu sect for the rest of your life. What do you think? Zhang Pinger's face lit up. Then she realized something and sneered, I didn't expect Garuda to be so magnanimous. Do you think I'm a fool? Ha. Who dares to covet my woman? Even if you don't say it, I'll ask Abbess Jingyi and cut that boy into pieces. Let's see if you still dare to go against me then. Garuda took a few steps forward. Garuda, if you take another step, I'll definitely jump down. Zhang Pinger took another step to the side. Half of her body was outside the cliff. Ha, Garuda shouted. Jump as much as you want. I only care about what's in your meridians. Even if it's a dead body, I can still use it. If you jump, I'll enjoy you, strip you naked and hang you next to the incense cult's Deity Lake. I'd like to see, where's your and the incense cult's face? Zhang Pinger was shocked. She hesitated. Garuda floated over and tried to catch her. Zhang Pinger didn't panic when she saw Garuda coming up. She gritted her teeth and didn't look at him anymore. She turned around and jumped down the cliff. However, her face was still looking in the direction of the incense cult. She whispered, Senior brother, I want to meet you first in my next life. Garuda was already in front of her. He reached out and grabbed her. She was just a hair's breadth away. When he wanted to ride the wind down again, he hesitated. The mountain was very high. If he was alone, he would definitely be fine. However, with Zhang Pinger, he wasn't confident. How could Garuda not consider giving up his life for the sake of breaking through the wind? Zhang Pinger had already fallen about 20 feet. Suddenly Garuda, who was in midair, shouted, Who are you? In midair not far from Garuda, there was a flash. A handsome man in a simple robe appeared out of thin air. He was of medium height and had a handsome face. It was Zhang Xiaohua. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes. However, it wasn't directed at Garuda. It was directed at Zhang Pinger, who was falling down the cliff. Her expression was both desperate and sad. Zhang Xiaohua was hiding beside Zhang Pinger. He had already heard her whispers. He didn't expect that he was so important to Zhang Pinger. Once this cold-faced but warm-hearted woman fell in love, she had already engraved Zhang Xiaohua in her heart. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua was so shocked that he exposed himself. He even forgot to save Zhang Pinger. Garuda and Zhang Xiaohua didn't care. He made a gesture and quickly flew down the cliff to catch Zhang Pinger, who was falling rapidly. Zhang Pinger was completely disheartened. However, she was determined and didn't faint. She suddenly stopped and felt a pair of warm hands around her waist. It felt so familiar that she couldn't help but wonder if she was in a dream. She turned around and hugged Zhang Xiaohua. She blurted out, "Senior brother, is that you?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said in a hoarse voice, "Who is your senior brother? Does he have such magical powers as I?" Ah, Zhang Pinger's face was flushed. She quickly withdrew her hands and calmed herself down. When she looked carefully, she was even more surprised. She was actually flying outside the cliff. Immortal Elder? Zhang Pinger suddenly realized that the news of an immortal cultivator appearing in Rejuvenation Valley had already spread throughout the Jianghu 2 months ago. Although the fragrant sect was somewhat uninformed, people had already talked about it at the Martial Arts Circle convention. How could Zhang Pinger not know? However, she had never thought that she would encounter it. Immortal Elder, save me. Immortal Elder, save me. Zhang Pinger immediately grasped at the life-saving straw. Don't shout, don't shout. If I didn't save you, I wouldn't have helped, Zhang Xiaohua said, amused. When Zhang Pinger heard this, she blushed again. Her heart was filled with hope again. In the distance, Garuda floated in the air. His expression was uncertain, as if he was hesitating about something. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua flying over with Zhang Pinger in his arms, his eyes narrowed. He immediately took out a coarse black bottle from his chest. He formed a seal with one hand and muttered something. A black fog flew out of the bottle. Garuda pointed at Zhang Xiaohua. The black fog immediately turned into an arrow and pierced toward Zhang Xiaohua. With a zhi sound, a yellow shadow fell from the sky and blocked in front of Zhang Xiaohua. As soon as the shadow appeared, a white light came from the shadow and covered the black fog. The arrow immediately panicked and was no longer in shape. A part of the black fog was sucked into the white light. This. Garuda was shocked. He looked at the small and skinny little marten beside the black fog in amazement. Woof, another bark. Another black shadow flew over. Similarly, a white light appeared and continued to suck in the black fog. When Garuda saw this, he calmed down and hurriedly used both his hands and mouth to retrieve the black fog. However, at this moment, 8 sword beams appeared out of thin air and shot towards Garuda from about 10 feet away. -4. Chapter 1055. Garuda was not surprised to see the 8 sword lights. He had heard from the disciples of the Tenryu sect that someone from the immortal Tao had appeared in Rejuvenation Valley, so he was prepared for Zhang Xiaohua's 8 sword lights. Therefore, when the 8 sword lights flashed, he immediately used the wind-controlling technique and dodged to the side. Garuda was indeed good at flying. His wind-controlling technique was different from the one Zhang Xiaohua had learned from the Misty School. It was very strange. While controlling the wind, it seemed to merge with the wind. When Zhang Xiaohua saw such a wondrous imperial wind technique, he couldn't help but be stunned and secretly praised it. However, the 8 sword lights still didn't stop. They only tilted slightly and still pierced towards Garuda. Garuda was even more surprised than Zhang Xiaohua. He had heard of the sword-controlling technique. There were people in the Tenryu sect who could barely control a sword. However, the sword-controlling technique was not much stronger than ordinary hidden weapons. Under the control of the technique, it could fly at will. In terms of speed, it was not as fast as Zhang Xiaohua's Sword of the World. Therefore, Garuda only strengthened his impression of the sword-controlling technique by 10 times to guess Zhang Xiaohua's flying sword. However, his guess was far from catching up with Zhang Xiaohua's flying sword. Before he could steady himself, The 8 flying swords were in front of him like swimming fish. Garuda was shocked. He tried to move away, but the first sword light pierced the black bottle in his hand with a bang. Garuda felt as if he had escaped death. Could it be that I missed? But then, the other 7 sword lights appeared again and hit the black bottle 7 times in a row. Garuda's hand was numb from the vibrations. He loosened his grip and the black bottle fell out of his hand. However, it still floated beside Garuda's hand. In just a few breaths, Little Black and Little Yellow had eliminated 30% of the black fog released by Garuda. Zhang Xiaohua also landed on the cliff with Zhang Pinger in her arms. Garuda's heart ached when he saw the loss of the black fog. He quickly made a gesture and commanded the black fog to retreat. Then, he reached into his chest and threw a pale white magic weapon that looked like a bone into the air. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised that the flying sword didn't shatter Garuda's black bottle as he had expected. Seeing Garuda take out his Dharma artifact, he didn't dare to be careless. He stretched out his hand and waved it. The dragon binding hoop expanded in the wind, turning into a 3-foot-long hoop that spiraled toward Garuda's bone. At this moment, the dragon binding hoop was different from before. After Zhang Xiaohua's blood refining, and as Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation increased, it gained a new mystique. Countless crimson flames appeared on the hoop and danced around it. It was like a few small fire dragons were flying around it. The aura was ferocious. Garuda frowned when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua had the dragon binding hoop in addition to her flying sword. He stood in the air and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoist, why are you so fierce in your first attack? Even the magic weapon that I dripped blood on was knocked out of your hand? Look at this situation. Are you going to fight to the death with me? Then, he looked at Zhang Pinger and asked, Do you know this Miss Zhang? Dripped blood on it? Zhang Xiaohua was taken aback. He had intended to destroy Garuda's black bottle with his flying sword. He had used the 8 sword beams, but none of them had landed. They had all hit Garuda, but all he had done was knock the black bottle out of Garuda's hand. Not only had he not destroyed it, but he could not even knock it down. Garuda had only casually waved his hand, and it flew back into his hand. Now that Garuda questioned her, Zhang Xiaohua chuckled. Who are you? Why do you call yourself a heavenly king? Fellow Taoist, you don't know me? Garuda was stunned. Are you very famous? Zhang Xiaohua looked up and smiled. It's just that your imperial wind technique is a little special. Should everyone know you? Garuda's imperial wind technique, which he was most proud of, was called a little special by someone else. But look at her, it was a flying technique. She had the right to criticize him. Garuda could only pinch his nose and answer, Fellow Taoist, I'm Garuda of the Tenryu sect. Oh, I know. So you're Garuda of the Tenryu sect. No wonder you call yourself a heavenly king and are so arrogant. You snatched a woman in broad daylight. Fellow Taoist, Garuda was anxious and explained, No matter how shameless I am, I wouldn't go so far as to snatch a woman. If you didn't snatch a woman, why did you force her into the cliff? Why did you attack me with a magic weapon when I tried to save her? Remember, you attacked I with a magic weapon first. I had no choice but to fight back. Garuda was so angry that his nose was crooked. He said loudly, Fellow Taoist, you're unreasonable. This woman is my concubine. It's only because of some family disputes that she thought of committing suicide. Before I could save her, you appeared and snatched my concubine away without saying a word. Tell me, how could I not intervene? Zhang Xiaohua sneered. She looked at the white bones that were emitting red smoke in the air and said, How could I listen to your side of the story? Moreover, since I have already intervened, there's no reason for me to give up halfway. Heavenly King, I'm afraid you don't want to let this go? If it was someone else, Garuda would have turned hostile long ago. However, he could only say coldly in the face of someone who didn't know the depth of the immortal Tao. I'm Garuda of the Tenryu sect. How could I surrender just because of a few words from you? Fellow Taoist, you must be Taoist Pan and who appeared briefly in front of Rejuvenation Valley. Since you're so righteous and like to see injustice, I'd like to see if you have the ability to take care of everything in the world. Come here. Zhang Xiaohua waved at Zhang Pinger and said, Tell I everything that happened? Yes, immortal elder. Zhang Ping'er knew that Zhang Xiaohua was the only person she could rely on. She quickly told her everything that happened in Huayu Palace. Zhang Xiaohua's face turned ashen when he heard this. Zhang Ping'er was just one of the many inner disciples of the fragrant cult. She was just a nobody, not even worth half a copper coin in the eyes of Nanjing Yi. That was why she had been given to Garuda so easily. But for Zhang Ping'er, this was like a bolt from the blue. Her fate had changed in an instant. Jingyi Nun might have thought that Zhang Ping'er's martial arts couldn't reach great success, so it was better for her to be a wealthy concubine in the Tenryu sect. However, in Zhang Ping'er's eyes, this was no different from hell on earth. A nobody would never have the right to decide their own fate. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head slightly and said to Zhang Ping'er, "What bullshit hierarch? What bullshit decree? I only want to ask you one thing. Are you willing to go with Garuda?" Zhang Ping'er said sadly, "Immortal Elder, please no. I don't want to go with him. Now I just want to die. I can't follow his wishes." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "What a woman with integrity." Then she said to Garuda, "Did you hear that? This doesn't seem to be your family's business anymore. I will definitely take care of this kind of forced prostitution. Unless I don't encounter it, I will definitely take care of it." Garuda almost fainted from anger. What did she mean by forced prostitution? Thus, he shouted, "Don't forget that I'm Garuda of the Tenryu sect. I don't want to fight with you, but if you insist on taking care of this matter, don't blame me for being ruthless. Don't blame the Tenryu sect for treating you as an enemy." Zhang Xiaohua could tell that Garuda was referring to the Tenryu sect. She leaped into the air and laughed wildly. "There are always injustices in this world. If I can't take care of them, then what's the point of cultivating the way of heaven? Garuda, your Tenryu sect is suppressing I. If you can defeat I will let go." Good, good, good. Garuda also laughed evilly. "If you can defeat me, I'll also give Zhang Ping'er to you." After saying that, he waved his hand and the black bottle that was suspended in the air disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense didn't find any clues. Could this be the magic of using a drop of blood to recognize a magic artifact as its master? Zhang Xiaohua was slightly stunned and thought, "What's a drop of blood to recognize a magic artifact as its master?" As the name suggests, it's to use a drop of blood to make a magic artifact recognize a master. But how do I do it? Before Zhang Xiaohua could think about it, the red smoke from the white bone in the air became thicker and gradually enveloped Garuda. Zhang Xiaohua pointed with her finger, and the dragon binding hoop was surrounded by flames. With a whoosh, it went down. However, before the dragon binding hoop could land, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over the red smoke and immediately sensed that something was wrong. The red smoke was different from the black smoke from before. It wasn't formed by small black insects. When Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense entered the smoke, it felt like it was sinking into a quagmire. It was difficult to even move Garuda, let alone see his shadow. Furthermore, when Zhang Xiaohua withdrew her divine sense, the red smoke actually showed signs of counterattacking along with her divine sense. Isn't this somewhat similar to the mysterious black smoke from before? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Since her divine sense couldn't be used freely in the red smoke, the dragon binding hoop couldn't land, and even the flying sword couldn't pierce it. No wonder Garuda was somewhat fearless. Zhang Xiaohua thought, and didn't dare to be careless. She released the Crimson Spirit Protection and first protected herself. Then, she tried to throw a fire talisman into the smoke. With a sizzling sound, the flames burned for a while before extinguishing. It didn't have any effect on the smoke at all. What magic artifact should I use? Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head. Although she knew how to use the purple phoenix hairpin and the Sangharama plate, she definitely couldn't use them now. Although the Prajna heavy sword wouldn't be affected by divine sense, it was Run Xiaoyao's trademark. She couldn't take it out now either. How could I have forgotten about it? Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead and unconsciously came to a realization. -4. Chapter 1056. In fact, when Garuda mentioned the magic item that could recognize its master by dripping blood on it, Zhang Xiaohua was already deep in thought. Now that he saw the crimson smoke getting thicker and thicker, Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the wind pearl he had obtained in the wind-forbidden valley of the Dalan Temple. She remembered that the wind pearl was very unruly at that time. Even the vitality of the bamboo used to suppress it had been depleted by it. However, when she tried to retrieve the wind pearl, she was cut by the wind from the wind pearl. After a drop of blood fell into the wind pearl became much more obedient and no longer released any evil wind. Could it be that the wind pearl is bound by blood? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. As she was thinking, the red smoke approached Zhang Xiaohua. It seemed that Garuda wanted to wrap Zhang Xiaohua in the smoke before killing her. Zhang Xiaohua flew up about 10 feet and reached into her belt to take out the jade box that contained the wind pearl. At this time, the restriction on the jade box was still there and the divine thought was still there. Zhang Xiaohua opened the jade box and held the wind pearl in her hand. Sure enough, she felt that it was connected to her blood. But how can I release the wind? Zhang Xiaohua wondered. Strangely, just as Zhang Xiaohua thought of this, a suction force appeared from the wind pearl and sucked the vital qi in Zhang Xiaohua's meridians into the wind pearl. Then, a gust of evil wind appeared outside the wind pearl. With a whoosh, it blew towards Garuda's smoke. At first, it was just a gust of wind, but when it reached the smoke, it became a gust of wind. It was the nemesis of smoke. As soon as the wind blew, all the red smoke was blown away, revealing Garuda, who had an incredulous expression on his face. Then, another gust of wind blew. Crack! The wind blew a crack on the floating white bone above Garuda's head. Garuda was shocked. He immediately ran away and kept the white bone in his hand. The other members of the Tenryu sect who were watching the battle from afar didn't stop to rest when they saw Garuda escape. They turned around and flew in the direction that Garuda had flown to. Looking at their clumsy appearance, it seemed that they had never experienced such a difficult situation before. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's face was also somewhat pale. Just now, the two wisps of evil wind had sucked away 90% of the true qi in his body. It made him want to kill the thief, but he didn't have the strength to pursue. A drop of blood to claim ownership? It's really amazing. But I don't think I can be the master of this wind pearl. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let it absorb my true qi. Zhang Xiaohua thought as she put the wind pearl back into the jade box. At this moment, Little Black and Little Yellow landed from the sky. They looked at Zhang Xiaohua curiously as she put the jade box into her belt. Zhang Pinger was pleasantly surprised. She took a few steps forward and fell to the ground. Thank you for saving my life, immortal elder. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and helped Zhang Pinger up. She smiled and said, Don't mention it, don't mention it. I just happened to be there at the right time. Anyone would have helped me. Then she looked at the desolate wilderness and frowned. This place is dangerous. It's not a good idea to stay here for long. Where are you going? Let me give you a ride. Zhang Pinger looked miserable and shook her head. I've lived in the fragrant sect for a long time. I don't have any relatives in other places. But now, the fragrant religion has abandoned me. This world is so big, but there is no place for me to stay. Zhang Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. Zhang Pinger suddenly thought of something and fell to the ground again. She cried and said, Immortal Elder is merciful. Can you take me as your disciple? Even if I have to work like a horse, I will repay Immortal Elder for saving my life. Oh, that's a good idea. Zhang Xiaohua's face lit up. In the Beidou school, other than Zhang Xiaohua, Little Martin, Puppy, and Ye Qianyu, who insisted on being accepted as a disciple. If she accepted Zhang Pinger as her disciple, it would also add to the popularity of the school. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Get up. Yes, master. Zhang Pinger heard that Zhang Xiaohua had no intention of rejecting her. She was happy and got up from the ground. She had already changed the way she addressed her. You must know that I am a person of the path of immortality. The path of immortality is different from martial arts. If you can't get started, your life will be wasted. I'm not afraid. Even if I can't make any progress, I'll be satisfied as long as I can be under Master's wing. It's not that simple. If your aptitude is not good enough, what's the use of joining my path of immortality? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Don't mention the matter of becoming my disciple. When I have time, I'll look at your aptitude and deal with it. Thank you for your permission, master. Zhang Pinger said happily. Okay, okay. Since you want to be Ai's disciple, I can't leave you alone. Zhang Xiaohua rolled his eyes and thought of an idea. He said, close your eyes first. Open them when I tell you to. Yes, master. Zhang Pinger closed her eyes obediently. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and grabbed Zhang Pinger's waist. He leaped into the air and flew back with Little Black and Little Yellow. When they arrived at the place where he had left Little White Deer and Huan Huan, he landed and said to Zhang Pinger, whose face was already red, Okay, open your eyes. Zhang Pinger opened her eyes. She looked for a long time but couldn't see where she was. However, she was very obedient and didn't ask. She only whispered, Why did Master bring me here? Is this Master's residence? Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, I have some trivial matters to attend to and can't return to the residence. I also left a registered disciple in Rejuvenation Valley. I can't send you to Rejuvenation Valley, so I want to help you find a mount. You can ride it to Rejuvenation Valley. Rejuvenation Valley? Nye Qianyu? How could Zhang Pinger not know? She said in surprise. I know about this, but isn't Nye Qianyu going to enter Beidou school? Master, this is... Zhang Xiaohua shook his head mysteriously and said, Don't worry about this for now. As he spoke, he took out a jade talisman for communication and handed it to Zhang Pinger. He said, This jade talisman is the same as Nye Qianyu's. You only need to tell her about it. Yes, I understand. Zhang Pinger took the jade talisman and carefully hid it. Just as she raised her head, she saw the David's deer in the distance. It was scared and wanted to come closer. She couldn't help but blurt out, Huan Huan? Huan Huan? Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be surprised. He pointed at the David's deer and said, Is that it? You know it? Zhang Pinger's face flushed. She whispered, Yes, this is the mount of a very good senior martial brother before I joined the cult of fragrance. However, it should be in the cult of fragrance. How did it get here? Haha, Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, That's good. I wanted to help you find a mount. You actually met an old friend's mount. This is outside the mountain path. There aren't any disciples of the cult of fragrance within a few miles. Perhaps this beast was abandoned here by your senior martial brother? It can't be. Senior martial brother really cares about this David's deer. Zhang Pinger shook her head. But, didn't you see the David's deer? It looks like it has suffered a great deal and was abandoned. Zhang Xiaohua looked around and said, This place is close to the mountain path. If it was seen by others, it might be captured. It's a small matter if it was used as a mount. If it was killed and eaten, wouldn't your senior martial brother be very sad if he knew? Yes, then what should I do? Zhang Pinger didn't know what to do when she thought of Zhang Xiaohua's sadness. You can ride it away first. When you meet your senior martial brother in the future, you can return it to him. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, You saved his mount. He can't blame you, right? Zhang Pinger felt that it was very reasonable. She could only nod. Okay, you can go up. Rejuvenation Valley seems to be in that direction. You can ask as you go. Zhang Xiaohua pointed in that direction and said, When I finish my business, I will go to Rejuvenation Valley to find you. Master, you can't abandon your disciple. Zhang Pinger said pitifully, I won't. I am a person of the Tao of Immortals. I pay the most attention to my reputation. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She turned around and flew north. Zhang Pinger waited until Zhang Xiaohua had flown out of sight before she patted her cheeks and confirmed that this really wasn't a dream. She then happily flew in the direction of Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua flew back and found the great wisdom sword that she had thrown on the ground. She then continued to fly north. However, she had used 90% of her true qi in the fight with Garuda today. Although she had recovered a bit before she sent Zhang Pinger back, her true qi was insufficient again when the sun set in the west. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua didn't continue on her way. She found a small thatched hut that seemed to be used by hunters in the wilderness and landed there. She set down a restriction and began to recover her true qi. When her true qi was replenished, the full moon hung high in the sky. Zhang Xiaohua stretched and released her divine sense. She looked around for a long time and didn't find anything unusual. Only then did she take out the wind pearl. The wind pearl was abnormally well-behaved and quietly stayed in the jade box. However, when Zhang Xiaohua sent her divine sense into it, she still couldn't do anything. It was different from the crimson spirit protection and dragon binding hoop that Zhang Xiaohua had refined before. Dripping blood to recognize it as its master? It doesn't seem as good as refining it. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Apart from feeling connected by blood and being able to blow out evil winds, Zhang Xiaohua still didn't know anything else about this wind pearl. What about the other celestial devices? Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the celestial devices that her divine sense couldn't penetrate. Zhang Xiaohua first took out the bamboo that was used to suppress the wind pearl. She made up her mind and bit her finger. A drop of blood that contained golden threads dripped onto the bamboo. Seeing the drop of blood seeping into the bamboo as if it was being absorbed, Zhang Xiaohua was suddenly shocked. Why are there golden threads in my blood? Could it be that I've contracted an extremely serious illness? Zhang Xiaohua anxiously checked her own pulse and used her divine sense to check her body for a long time. However, she didn't find anything unusual. She just slowly circulated her true qi in her meridians and still didn't find any clues. What's going on? Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. At this moment, the 7-section bamboo suddenly emitted a faint Buddhist light. Then, it was extinguished. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have some inexplicable things in her mind. That bamboo in Zhang Xiaohua's hand also had a feeling that it was connected by blood. Please cast a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a collection, and a tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1057. The Tree of Seven Wonders? This lousy thing is called the Tree of Seven Wonders? Zhang Xiaohua stared at the ordinary-looking bamboo in her hand in disbelief. It seemed that only the 7 bamboo sections had anything to do with the name Tree of Seven Wonders. Regardless of whether it was treasure, wonder, or tree, there was no connection at all. Oh my God! This Dalan Temple. The old monk really knows how to come up with names. Zhang Xiaohua gave the Dalan Temple a thumbs up in her mind as she flipped through the information that had just been transmitted to her. Unfortunately, all that appeared in her mind was a blur except for the name. She did not even know how to use it. Sigh. It must have been because it had been fighting with the wind bead for so long that it had exhausted everything. It didn't even have time to write down its last words. I wonder what kind of awesome name that Lotus Throne 9 could be called. With that thought, Zhang Xiaohua threw the so-called Tree of Seven Wonders into her belt. Perhaps in antiquity times, the Tree of Seven Wonders was indeed an extremely important treasure to the Dalan Temple. But now, it only had a little Buddha's light left. It needed the help of the Lotus Throne to suppress the wind bead. It was no longer as glorious as it used to be. Zhang Xiaohua endured the pain and dripped a drop of blood on the Lotus Throne 9. Just like the Tree of Seven Wonders, there was a faint Buddha's light, followed by white, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, and black. 9 colors flashed on the Lotus Throne 9. Finally, the 9 lotuses on the Lotus Throne 9 each had a different color and disappeared. At the same time, some blurry things appeared in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. What made Zhang Xiaohua's jaw drop was that the Lotus Throne 9 did not have a name at all. Perhaps its name was Lotus Throne 9. Are you kidding me? The previous ordinary bamboo was so arrogant. Even the famous Tree of Seven Wonders did not have any treasures. This Lotus Throne 9 could compete with the Black Flag, so it must be of a high level. Since it's only called Lotus Throne 9, I wonder if it's because this celestial device is not good enough? Or the monks who use it are lazy. The things left behind by the 9th grade Lotus platform were also blurry. Zhang Xiaohua only leaped up and sat on the Lotus platform. With a thought, the Lotus platform emitted a faint Buddhist light, enveloping him inside. It should be a defensive magical artifact like the Crimson Spirit Shield. Zhang Xiaohua had no idea how to find other functions. Forget it. Zhang Xiaohua also put the 9th-grade Lotus Throne into her belt. You're already surnamed Zhang. Even if you grow hair, don't even think about running away. One day, I'll find a way to use you. Looking at the time, Zhang Xiaohua also lost interest in piercing her blood to recognize her as the owner. She sat cross-legged and took out a few of the jade slips that she obtained from Immortal Hualong from Dragon Mountain. She took a quick look at them. Immortal Hualong's Tao was the orthodox Tao of celestials. It talked about how to absorb qi into the body and then refine the qi. When the qi refinement stage was completed, one would have to condense the vital qi into a liquid state in the lower abdomen, which was known as the real liquid. At the same time, one would enter the so-called foundation establishment stage. The cultivation of the foundation establishment stage was obviously different from that of the qi refinement stage. There were many ways to cultivate, and the variety was also very complicated. Zhang Xiaohua was confused. What about after the foundation establishment stage? Zhang Xiaohua continued to read, but there was a blank page of martial arts manuals. Isn't that so? Immortal Hualong himself said that he was in the foundation establishment stage. If he himself did not complete the foundation establishment stage, how could he have martial arts manuals after the foundation establishment stage? It's just that. What's the realm after the foundation establishment stage? It seems like Senior Wan Wuxin's cultivation was after the foundation establishment stage, but I've never heard of him achieving it before. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and wanted to keep the jade bamboo slip into his money bag. But suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and his face was slightly shocked. He released his spiritual perception and impatiently immersed it into the jade bamboo slip. After he finished searching, his face revealed a puzzled expression. No wonder I felt that something was amiss just now. Now I finally understand. This Immortal Hualong's cultivation of the lower dantian is the same as the current martial arts. The martial arts manuals that he passed down all focus on the lower dantian. I am unable to cultivate it. Furthermore, the martial arts manual that Immortal Hualong cultivated, Fire Cloud Sutra, only has 13 levels of the Qi refinement stage. Compared to the Carefree Heart Sutra, it's 5 levels lower. What's going on? Following that, Zhang Xiaohua took a look at Immortal Hualong's martial arts manuals. Although the dantian that he cultivated was different, the martial arts manuals were similar. They all revolved around drawing energy into the body and using the meridians to refine the energy. This is great. Zhang Xiaohua came to a realization. Wasn't the meridians that Immortal Hualong's Fire Cloud Sutra used to refine the meridians that he knew of? Previously, when he saw the meridians of the Byron when they were born, he had recorded it in his heart. However, he was unable to find a way to cultivate it. Now, wasn't this Fire Cloud Sutra a new way to cultivate it? But I've only cultivated 10 levels of the Carefree Heart Sutra. There's still a lot more in the future. The heaven and earth's energy is also insufficient. Where would I find the time to cultivate the lower dantian? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head again. Forget it. I'll wait till I've mastered the Carefree Heart Sutra before I cultivate this Fire Cloud Sutra. Or, I'll let the Beidou school disciples cultivate this Fire Cloud Sutra. After making up his mind, Zhang Xiaohua kept the Fire Cloud Sutra in his money pouch. He did not look at the other jade scrolls. He would wait till the Beidou school was established and have the time to sort them out. Seeing that there was still time, Zhang Xiaohua took out the blade-breaking force and, soft as water, these 2 secret manuals were the manuals of the Xindao sect and the Incense sect. They were the manuals that helped to improve the martial arts. Zhang Xiaohua was thick-skinned enough to keep them. How could he not take a look at them? After reading them, Zhang Xiaohua frowned. These 2 secret manuals were similar. According to the manuals, the inner strength of martial arts could indeed be converted into true qi. However, it was extremely dangerous and required luck. It was not much different from the difficulty of drawing qi into the body. It was a supreme technique that could be used when the qi of heaven and earth was decreasing sharply. However, there was a huge drawback. The true qi in the meridians was converted by the inner strength of martial arts. The foundation was too weak. In the future, it would be congenitally deficient. It would be difficult to achieve great success in cultivation. Even when mobilizing the qi of heaven and earth, it would be difficult to achieve great success. Many of the supernatural powers that Zhang Xiaohua knew of, such as the flying sword, would be difficult to achieve great success. Where was I thinking? Zhang Xiaohua patted her forehead and laughed. The qi of heaven and earth has decreased greatly. Although it is recovering, I'm afraid it will be thousands or even tens of thousands of years later. Even if there is a supernatural power that can mobilize the chi of heaven and earth, there is no chi of heaven and earth to mobilize. Isn't that nonsense? It would be better to just mobilize the true chi in the body. Moreover, haven't I been mobilizing the true chi in my meridians? How many times can I use the chi of heaven and earth? It seems that the sword-breaking force and like water are more precious than the Fire Cloud Sutra and the Carefree Heart Sutra. After all, the former could be used to become a celestial, while the latter could never be used without help. All right, these two secret manuals should be given to second sister-in-law. However, I have to keep a copy of them in Beidou School to give the disciples of Beidou School a path to heaven. Zhang Xiaohua now had the awareness of the founder of Beidou School. Oh yes, what is the use of Elder Hua's Peiyuan pill? I have to find out how to use it. Zhang Xiaohua flipped through Fire Dragon Jinren's Jade Bamboo Slip and found it in one of the Jade Bamboo Slip. As expected, I understand now. When Zhang Xiaohua finished reading it, she was overjoyed. She had always felt that it was extremely difficult to attract qi into the body. Without a trace of cultivation, how could one sense the qi of heaven and earth outside the body? Even the sword-breaking force and like water were used by martial arts experts to change their inner strength and sense the qi of heaven and earth. After all, they had inner strength and had a preliminary foundation. The people of the celestial path were extremely powerful. How could they not have thought of this? This Peiyuan pill was a pill that cultivated the qi of heaven and earth in the body of a cultivator of the celestial path. Consuming the Peiyuan pill would allow the cultivator to sense the characteristics of the qi of heaven and earth. Furthermore, using the qi of heaven and earth produced by the Peiyuan pill as a foundation, one would be able to attract qi into the body. It's done. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Disciples of Beidou School, you are in luck. Now that everything is ready, we only need one thing." Previously, Zhang Xiaohua had obtained the 5 colors chalcedony from 9 Radiance Peak and the Spirit Gathering Formation. She should be able to set up the 5 elements Spirit Gathering Formation. Now that she had obtained the Peiyuan pill and the cultivation method of Immortal Fire Dragon, she even had the cultivation method of martial arts. The establishment of Beidou School seemed to be a matter of course. However, what did Zhang Xiaohua mean by everything is ready? We only need one thing? After taking stock of her recent gains, Zhang Xiaohua patted her money pouch with satisfaction. Just when she was about to cultivate the Worry-Free Heart Sutra, she suddenly remembered that the small mirror that she used to use often had now been restored to the real Hao Tian mirror. It seemed that she had not dripped her blood on it yet. This small mirror was extremely powerful and could reflect any light or water. Furthermore, judging from the mirror's movements in between the clouds and the water, it should still have sufficient qi of heaven and earth. It would not give her a half-assed introduction like the Lotus Throne and the Tree of 7 Wonders, right? Luckily, the Hao Tian mirror did not disappoint Zhang Xiaohua. After dripping her blood on it, Zhang Xiaohua used the first level of the Hao Tian mirror's sacrificial formula in her mind. At the same time, she also had the introduction of the Hao Tian mirror. Just as Zhang Xiaohua had expected, the Hao Tian mirror could reflect all attacks. Of course, this attack was within the range that Zhang Xiaohua could withstand. Furthermore, the Hao Tian mirror could reflect all things that were hidden, including cultivation base and traces. Zhang Xiaohua had already seen all of these in between the clouds and the water. As for the other auxiliary functions, Zhang Xiaohua only skimmed through them briefly and placed her divine sense at the end. The Hao Tian mirror could break through space and travel through time. Hiss! Zhang Xiaohua gasped. This Hao Tian mirror is really too heaven-defying. Is this still a magic item? It's simply a treasure. It can break through space? If Wan Wuxin and the others were to obtain it, wouldn't they be able to return to the ruins? But this item is in the Fragrance Cult and the Shundao sect. Why didn't they discover it? Zhang Xiaohua was extremely puzzled. -4. Chapter 1058. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness I didn't let them get it, or I wouldn't be able to get it. Zhang Xiaohua was happy when he thought about it. However, when he looked at it carefully, he found that the so-called Hao Tian mirror actually had 18 levels of sacrificial refining. After each level was refined, a corresponding skill would appear. If he wanted to break the space and travel through time, he would have to refine all the way to the 18th level. After Zhang Xiaohua memorized the first level of the incantation and tried to cultivate it, he nearly vomited blood. The first level of the Hao Tian mirror was enough for a kid in the middle stage of qi refining like him to slowly cultivate, let alone the 18th level. Moreover, using the Hao Tian mirror required a huge amount of zhenqi. If it was only used for defense, Zhang Xiaohua's zhenqi would be more than enough. If it was used to attack, except for the self-protection of the Hao Tian mirror, any other kind of attack would definitely empty Zhang Xiaohua's zhenqi. It seemed that the Hao Tian mirror was not a magical item for a practitioner of Zhang Xiaohua's level. What can I do? What can I do? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged his shoulders and put the Hao Tian mirror into his money pouch. He sighed helplessly. Yeah, I'd better memorize the incantation first and slowly refine it. Speaking of which, Zhang Xiaohua was also very unlucky. He got a lot of magical items in his belt, but they were either trash or the best. He couldn't use many of them. On the other hand, he could use some of them, such as the purple phoenix hairpin and the Sangharama plate, but he couldn't take them out. Well, there were also some items he didn't know about, such as the 5 elements bead, the green gourd, the earth's core, the yin-yang fruit. Forget it, he didn't want to talk about them. If he talked too much, Zhang Xiaohua would feel sad again. That night, Zhang Xiaohua rested in the straw hut in the wilderness and cultivated the Worry-Free Heart Sutra. The two little things, Little Black and Little Yellow, also curled up in the starlight and adjusted their breath instinctively. Early in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. She first practiced the Big Dipper magical fist, then took out the wrought copper staff and practiced the heaven-piercing staff technique several times in the fresh and earthy fragrance. That day, Huban had said that if he could defeat Yang Chun, he would give the cooked copper rod to Zhang Xiaohua. After leaving the arena, Zhang Xiaohua didn't look for Huban. She decisively put away the cooked copper rod, giving Huban a chance to keep his promise. The sky-piercing staff technique had a total of 360 moves. The more Zhang Xiaohua practiced, the more comfortable she felt. The more she practiced, the smoother the flow of her real qi in her body became. But as for the specific benefits of her practice, Zhang Xiaohua herself was not clear. She only faintly felt that as long as she continued to practice, not only would she become proficient in the moves, but she would also be able to gain an advantage in a fight. It would also have a profound impact on her own practice. When the sun rose, Zhang Xiaohua soared into the sky and headed north again. In order not to get lost, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense as she flew. When she saw a town, she would land and quietly ask someone to inquire about the direction. She flew for more than 8 days. On this day, when Zhang Xiaohua was flying in the air, her divine sense suddenly found a caravan on the spacious official road. This caravan immediately attracted her attention. It was not that this caravan was different from other caravans, nor was it that the goods sold by this caravan were special. It was just that one of the coachmen in this caravan looked quite familiar to Zhang Xiaohua. When she thought about it carefully, she realized that it was Zhou Mufeng, Martial Uncle Zhou, whom she met when she followed Zhang Xiaohu to the ethereal villa at the back of Shirxin Peak. Zhou Mufeng had lost all his martial arts. It was Zhang Xiaohua who repaired his broken dantian with the meridian-nourishing pill. Hee, so it's the old, weak, sick and disabled from the Misty School. They actually followed us out. Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Her divine sense carefully scanned the caravan again. This caravan was not big, only a few dozen people. Except for Zhou Mufeng, Zhang Xiaohua did not know the rest. Presumably, the thousands of people from the ethereal villa had split up and gone on their own in order not to attract the attention of the Righteous Alliance or other forces in the Jianghu. Since she had seen the disciples from the Misty School, Zhang Xiaohu was not far away. Zhang Xiaohua was anxious and sped up, wanting to see her second brother as soon as possible. However, after flying for a few more days, and with Zhang Xiaohua's attention, she did see many disciples from the Misty School along the way. Not to mention Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, Shernyo and others from the ethereal villa. She also saw Wan Wanhai, Lu Yueming, Xueqing and He Tianshu from the Misty Hall. However, she did not see Zhang Xiaohu. Why is this? Could it be that second brother was left behind? That's not right. Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. She descended from the sky and hit her figure. She lightly landed on the carriage and pricked up her ears to listen to the movement inside. This carriage was quite big, and it was dressed like a rich merchant. When Wen Hai and Lu Yueming were sitting inside, both of them were sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, as if they were seizing the time to cultivate. After waiting for a while, Zhang Xiaohua was a little impatient. When she was about to get up, she saw Lu Yueming open his eyes and open his mouth. He wanted to say something but closed it again. At this time, when Wen Hai also opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Junior brother Lu, if you have something to say, you can say it. Why do you keep silent again and again? Could it be about little tiger?" Alas, yes. Lu Yueming heard Wen Hai's question and could only say, "Actually, I've always wanted to talk to senior brother. It's just that before, there were disciples from the cult of fragrance, so I didn't dare to leak the news." Hee, junior brother Lu, as the saying goes, breaking through the confinement of a phoenix and breaking through the golden lock of a dragon. Now that we've left the cult of fragrance, the Jianghu is so big that we can only be fish in the vast sea and birds in the sky. Why should we be afraid of those cult of fragrance disciples? Hee, senior brother one, you've forgotten that we haven't recovered our martial arts yet. How can we be so bold? If the cult of fragrance disciples see us, I'm afraid it will be disadvantageous to little tiger. Then, he sighed, I wonder how senior brother one feels. This time, I've really understood how powerful Abbess Jingyi is. She actually released our misty sect's disciples to spread the incense cult. She even sent disciples to help us rebuild the misty sect. Isn't she afraid that she won't be able to control us? Yes. When Wen Hai also sighed, I'm afraid even Master wouldn't use such a ruthless method when he was alive. Yes, although Master used the same method to deal with the Luo River Gang, he also spared Shui Yuping's family in case she had second thoughts. But Abbess Jing-yi didn't spare a single person. I heard that even Martial Uncle Li and Martial Uncle Lu were released. Yes, that's a big move. When Wen Hai nodded, but I don't believe that Abbess Jing-yi didn't have a way to defend herself. I'm sure that Gao Kunheng, the deputy faction leader, and those outer core disciples of the incense cult who were sent to assist us are also Nun Jingyi supporters. I'm guessing that's one of the reasons. Maybe there's a second reason. We'll have to ask Little Tiger about it. Yes. Lu Yueming was a little hesitant. After a while, he said, moreover, Abbess Jing-yi pushing Little Tiger to the position of faction leader is really out of our expectations. I'm sure senior brother one didn't expect this either. Indeed, I thought that Abbess Jing-yi would train Little Tiger for a few years and wait for the right time to announce it. Who knew that it would be so sudden? This is also Abbess Jing-yi's method. Lu Yueming sighed. On one hand, she found the chief disciple of the Misty School. On the other hand, she found the easiest person to control. It's both the most legitimate and the least legitimate. Not only can she make us Misty School disciples temporarily listen to Little Tiger's orders, but she can also make us Misty School disciples feel estranged and suspicious of each other. We can't be united. AI, that's right, when Wen Hai nodded in agreement but didn't ask any more questions. He must have thought about it for a long time. Could it be? Lu Yueming thought for a while and said, could it be that senior brother one isn't tempted by the position of faction leader of the Misty School? Seeing that when Wen Hai didn't say anything, Lu Yueming continued, previously, we lost all our cultivation and were powerless for this position. But it's different now. Senior brother Zhang isn't here, so senior brother Wan is the leader. You, when Wen Hai chuckled and said, Junior brother Lu, what should I say to you? We've been brothers for so many years. How can I not know what you're thinking? Don't try to trick me with words. Actually, when Little Tiger healed me and told me about the chief disciple of the Misty Hall, I already told him my thoughts. This so-called Misty Hall master and the current faction leader of the Misty School, I don't care about them. AI, actually, even if I care about them, can I fight with my own disciple? How can I compete with my benefactor who has restored my power? Hee. Lu Yueming smiled and didn't say anything else. Junior brother Lu, I know you admire Little Tiger's chivalrous heart and want to help him. Since you thought of it, how can I, as his master, not think of it? Besides, you and I aren't qualified to fight for this position right now. Lu Yueming was surprised when he heard this. Who else could it be? Are there any other senior brothers still alive? I don't know if any of the other senior brothers are still alive, but we still have 3 senior uncles and senior uncles. They're still alive? Ah? It can't be. They're martial arts. Lu Yueming almost cried out. I thought Little Tiger only healed the 3 of us. Don't tell me he healed Senior Uncle Li and Senior Uncle Lu as well? Io, that's bad. If the senior uncles want to fight with Nun Jingyi, maybe Little Tiger's position won't be stable. Hee, Junior Brother Lu, you don't have to worry about this. If he only healed Senior Uncle Li and Senior Uncle Lu, Zhang Xiaohua's position would be contested. But, according to Little Tiger, he healed all the disciples of the Misty Mountain Villa. Tell me, how can the 2 senior uncles compete with him? Ah? Lu Yueming's jaw dropped. How is that possible? Don't tell me Zhang Xiaohu met a deity? -4. Chapter 1059. Of course he met an immortal, but this immortal is his blood brother. Zhang Xiaohua secretly laughed as she eavesdropped from the carriage. This matter concerns Little Tiger's life. Even I didn't dare to ask. Anyway, as long as I can restore the martial arts of all the brothers in the Misty School, not to mention an immortal, even if I meet a demon, I'll be happy. Well, I was wondering why Little Tiger has been so busy with the affairs of the Misty Hall. He didn't even have time to practice martial arts. So you guys have been plotting all this time. We didn't deliberately hide it from you. It's just that this matter is too important and Little Tiger's foundation is still shallow. It will take a lot of time for him to become the Misty Hall's leader, so we didn't tell you. Well, Senior Brother One, you don't have to explain, I understand. I've been worried about you, so. Oh, right, if it's as you said, Little Tiger can sit back and relax as the faction leader. But, thinking about it, there should be 2 more difficulties. 2. When Wenhai said curiously, I think only Martial Uncle who will be a big problem. After all, Little Tiger was given the position by Abbess Jingyi. If Martial Uncle who doesn't admit it, it will be very difficult. Yes, of course this is a big problem, but this problem, maybe Martial Uncle Li and Martial Uncle Lu have already planned it, but we can't. What I want to talk about is another problem. Junior Brother, please go ahead. When Wenhai nodded. Of course it's Little Tiger's martial arts. Lu Yueming frowned. His martial arts are so bad that he can't even be ranked in the 3 beauties of the Misty School. How can he convince everyone? Even if he has a big contribution. But it's not a long-term solution. Haha, what am I thinking? If it's martial arts, then you don't have to worry about him. When Wenhai smiled and whispered something to Lu Yueming, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't hear it clearly, but his heart skipped a beat. He still had some qi replenishing pills in his pouch. He didn't want to attract the attention of the fragrant cult, so he didn't give them to his second brother. Perhaps this was a good opportunity. Inside the carriage, someone exclaimed, What? Little Tiger? Lu Yueming lowered his voice and said, Little Tiger actually has such talent? I don't think so. It's not just you. Even I don't believe it. When Wenhai was also extremely depressed, I heard that the Plain Domain mantra is an inner strength mantra of extreme yin and is most suitable for women to cultivate. In order to control Xiaohu, it can be said that Abbess Jingyi has racked her brains. Who would have thought that I would actually pick up such an excellent disciple who has successfully cultivated the extreme yang ethereal divine art and the extreme yin Plain Domain mantra at the same time. Presumably, with yin and yang as one, dragon and tiger blending together, Xiaohu's martial arts will definitely reach great success and catch up to Master's realm in the future. This stupid brat actually has this kind of aptitude. I really couldn't tell. Back then, at this time, Lu Yueming suddenly remembered that he had only seen Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohua in the past and had never seen Zhang Xiaohu. He could only smile and say, Back then, I saw his 2 brothers and they both looked quite stupid. Who would have thought that a martial arts genius like him would appear? Piffed. Hearing this, when Wenhai also laughed and said, I don't know about his big brother, Zhang Xiaolong, but I heard from He Tianshu that his little brother was someone who couldn't even cultivate the Arhat fist. Back then, He Tianchu was extremely depressed. Ah, is that so? There's someone who couldn't even cultivate the Arhat fist? That seemingly stupid little boy? Lu Yueming didn't know where he saw Zhang Xiaohua's stupidity and blurted out, however, that child's temperament is firm and resolute. In order to save his sister-in-law, he even stood in front of her and was kicked until he vomited blood. Outside the carriage, Zhang Xiaohua's nose almost became crooked. How am I stupid? Hero Lu, you have to be responsible for what you say. Yes, that's right. I heard from Xiaohu that for a girl, he even killed his way up Shichui Mountain alone. Sigh, it's a pity that his aptitude is not good and his fate is not good either. How am I not good? And, please, I'm still alive. Zhang Xiaohua almost wanted to jump down and reason with them. He didn't expect that these two heroes of the Jianghu would be so gossipy and actually talk about him behind his back. Oh, where are we now? Lu Yueming lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. I'm not sure and I'm too lazy to ask. Anyway, we're here. Ethereal Heights is Misty Schools. We just have to go in. Haha, that's right. Xiaohu was the one who led the charge. They should be arriving soon. Yes, that's right. Let's come out together. They've been moving stealthily for almost 2 months now. They should have reached the boundary of Pingyang City. Gosh, you should have said so earlier. Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose. His heart was hurt by the two heroes' talk. He jumped and flew straight to the north. Zhang Xiaohua's flying technique was swift. In just 2 days' time, he had reached the boundary of Pingyang City. After asking for directions, Zhang Xiaohua was about to fly away when he saw a fast horse galloping on the official road. The person on the horse was so tired that he was drenched in sweat. When he sat down, white smoke was coming out of his mouth and nose. He must be extremely tired. Sure enough, after galloping for another 100 feet, the horse fell dead by the roadside. The person on the horse jumped up lightly. He didn't even look at the horse. He looked around and saw a tea stall and a few fine horses in front of the tea stall. He was delighted. He used his lightness skill to reach the tea stall. Once he lifted the curtain, he shouted, "Which hero does the horse at the door belong to? I have something important to do. Can you give me the horse?" Someone in the tea stall laughed and said, "Hero, we also ride horses. If we give you the horse, how are we going to travel? You'd better look for it elsewhere." These words were reasonable, so the man was not angry. He reached out and took out an ingot of gold from his bosom. He smiled and said, "This humble one really has an important matter. This is the money to buy a horse. Hero, please accept it." That person looked at it. Although there was greed in his eyes, he still shook his head. In the end, that man had no choice. He gritted his teeth and took out 2 ingots of gold and a waist token. He cupped his hands and said, "I am Su Jie, a disciple of the Righteous Alliance. I have something important to do on the road ahead. This is my waist token. Please accept it. In the future, if you encounter any problems in the Jianghu that you can't solve, or if you feel that I can speak to you, feel free to look for me." Righteous Alliance? Those people looked at each other. They were all surprised. The person from before also stood up and said, "So it's Brother Su from the Righteous Alliance. I am Zhou Chengxian from the Vast Moon Sect. I have a few brothers in the Righteous Alliance that I know. Since the Righteous Alliance has something important to do, how can I delay it? Please accept the gold and let Brother Su ride the horse." How can this be? Su Jie wanted to hand over the gold, but how could Zhou Chengxian be willing to accept it? Su Jie did not dare to delay any longer. He handed the waist token to Zhou Chengxian and said, "Brother Zhou is so righteous. I thank you on behalf of the Righteous Alliance. I won't say anything else. I will be in Pingyang City for the next few days. If Brother Zhou wants to come, I will be a good host." Well said. Well said. Zhou Chengxian smiled and kept the waist token. Su Jie did not dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and bade farewell. He led the horse and galloped along the official road. Hee, Brother Zhou is going to treat us. An inferior horse in exchange for a favor from the Righteous Alliance. It's really worth it. The person beside him said with a smile, "Isn't that so? Let's go. Everyone, let's go to the town in front. I will treat everyone, not to mention these few people." When Su Jie turned around a big tree on his horse, a tall and thin figure suddenly appeared on his horse. It was Zhang Xiaohua who had seen and heard everything just now. Then, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and pressed Su Jie to a stop. She slapped the horse to death and carried Su Jie to a secluded place. How could she not know what was going on when she used her bewitching finger? It was indeed the messenger from the Righteous Alliance. That alliance leader Zhou of the Righteous Alliance had received the news that Misty School had returned to Ethereal Peak from Huayu Palace. That night, he had sent out the news and used various methods to pass this news to the Righteous Alliance disciples in Ethereal Peak. However, how could they be faster than Zhang Xiaohua? Even the messenger pigeons could not be compared to her. Therefore, he was stopped by Zhang Xiaohua here. Hee, it seems that second brother has not arrived yet, Zhang Xiaohua thought. She pressed Su Jie's Achilles' heel and flew up again. This time, it was even faster. In less than half a day, they arrived at a mountain village. It was already dark. Tents were set up in the forest beside the mountain village and in the ravines. Many patrolling disciples were holding swords and sabers in their hands. They were lined up in several teams and were on duty. At the entrance of the village, a young disciple was holding something in his hand and saying something to the other disciples. Hee, isn't this Dufeng? I haven't seen him for a few days, and it seems that his martial arts have improved. Seeing Dufeng here, Zhang Xiaohua was relieved. Needless to say, second brother was also nearby. Sure enough, with a sweep of her divine sense, in a small courtyard at the east of the village, Zhang Xiaohu was sitting in the central room. Chang'e and Chen Shun were also sitting beside him. There was still food on the table, but at this time, the food was already cold. The three of them seemed to have no appetite and were sitting quietly. Zhang Xiaohua also looked to the side. There were no disciples of the incense cult around, so she made a gesture and escaped into the central room. Zhang Xiaohu was in a daze when a voice sounded from the side. Oh, who made this food? It's already cold and you haven't eaten it. How can such a culinary skill be married into our Zhang family? Who? The three of them were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. As soon as they heard someone, they immediately jumped up and raised the long swords in their hands. They were about to stab in the direction of the voice. Ah, Xiaohua. Chang'e's eyes were sharp and saw her first. He exclaimed, You? Why are you here? Chen Shun was also puzzled and said softly, Zhang Xiaohua, you? Why aren't you being an alchemy disciple at Lingxiang Peak? Why are you here? Damn, what the hell is going on? It's been a long time. Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. Xiaohua, you're here? Zhang Xiaohu was calm. When he saw that it was Zhang Xiaohua, he put the long sword on the table and asked, -4. Chapter 1060. Chang'e and Chen Shun relaxed when they saw that it was Zhang Xiaohua. However, they still went to the door with long swords in their hands and looked carefully before coming back. Zhang Xiaohua laughed secretly. She had used the earth escape to get in. She didn't know why they went to the door to look. What's wrong? Second brother, second sister-in-law, why are you so nervous? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, who knew that this time, Chang'e was not as shy as before. He said in all seriousness, our ethereal sect's return to Pingyang City this time is a surprise attack. Of course, we have to be careful. If the Alliance of Righteous Sects gets the slightest bit of information, not only will there be a lot of casualties in the sect, whether we can take down ethereal heights will also be a problem. How can we not be nervous? By the way, Zhang Xiaohua, aren't you refining elixirs at Lingxiang Peak? Why are you here? Chen Chen asked softly. Don't tell me. Nanjingyi sent you. Oh, she sent an inner disciple to help us. And you, the little dog and little Martin, on your shoulder, are they? The ones I held in Orchid Canyon? They don't seem to have grown much. Chen Chen asked while looking curiously at Xiaohuang and Xiaohe who were standing on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder. These two little things just walked up and down on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and looked at Zhang Xiaohu and the other two, but didn't seem to care about them. Haha, you asked so many questions at once. How do you want me to answer? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and stroked Little Black. She said, It's those two little things. I don't know. They seem to be growing very slowly. Then, Zhang Xiaohua frowned again and said, Nanjingyi, inner disciple? I remember that you used to call her sect master at Shershin Peak. Now, haha, have you all changed to Nanjingi? Chang'e sneered and said, that was then and this is now. Back then, we were like fish on a chopping board. As a disciple of the Misty Hall, of course, we had to call him sect master. Now that we are back in Jianghu and have become a Misty school, of course, we have to change the way we address him. Chen also gritted his teeth and said, that's right. At first, I thought that Nanjingi was very kind to the disciples of our Misty school. Although I haven't seen her real face, I heard her kind voice and thought that it was only right for me to call her master. But I didn't expect that. She actually used so many tricks to break up senior sister and senior brother. Moreover, in order to control senior brother, she even poisoned him. When Chen Shan saw Zhang Xiaohua, it was as if she had seen her family. She poured out all her grievances as if she was complaining to an adult. What? Poison? Jingyi, you old beggar. Zhang Xiaohua was furious. He didn't sit down at first. At this time, he slapped the table where the food was placed and his body emitted a kind of anger. Zhang Xiaohu, Chang'e, and Chen Chun had never seen Zhang Xiaohua so angry. At this time, he suddenly became angry and they were shocked. The Zhang Xiaohua in front of them was very different from what they remembered. In a moment, he was like a coiling dragon with its bloody mouth open and glaring at them, which made them shudder. Then, with a crash, the table had been smashed into powder and the bowls and chopsticks on the table were scattered on the ground. Xiaohua. I'm fine. Zhang Xiaohu was a little frightened and didn't dare to know Zhang Xiaohua. He said in a low voice, oh, second brother, I forgot myself. Zhang Xiaohua saw that he forgot himself and hurriedly said with a smile. Outside the yard, some disciples had heard the noise and had come. Second sister-in-law, you send these disciples away. I'll hide for a while. Zhang Xiaohua made an incantation and disappeared. Zhang Xiaohu was not surprised to see Zhang Xiaohua suddenly disappear. Only Chang'e and Chen Shun looked at it in a daze. It was Ding Chao who came in. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohu and the other two were fine, he was relieved and cupped his hands, saying, Master Zhang, is there anything wrong? This table? At this time, Chang'e came to her senses. She nudged Chen Shun with her arm and said with a smile, it's okay, senior brother Ding. Xiaohu was a little absent-minded when practicing martial arts and accidentally broke the table. Alas, we can go back to the ethereal heights tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Xiaohu was a little excited and practiced a little harder. Chang'e, junior sister, I understand Master Zhang's mood. The disciples of our Misty School are all eager to go back to the ethereal heights these days. Haha, but Master Zhang has a noble body and needs to rest more. As he said that, he beckoned his disciples forward to clean up the table. But when he saw that the table had already been shaken into powder, he couldn't help but be stunned. What kind of inner strength was this, to be able to shake a table into powder? Could it be that Master Zhang had been hiding his strength all this time? When Ding Chao glanced at Zhang Xiaohu, who was calm and composed, he was more sure of his idea. Zhang Xiaohu is really hiding his strength. Alas, we Misty School 2 talents said that his martial arts were not good enough behind his back, but we didn't know that he didn't intend to compete with us for this title at all. Zhang Xiaohu was still thinking about the angry look of Zhang Xiaohua just now. He didn't expect Ding Chao to think so much. Of course, the table was not broken by him, so he didn't need to pay for it. Naturally, he looked calm and composed. When Ding Chao asked the disciples to clean up and leave with a longing mood, Zhang Xiaohua's figure appeared again. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't move at all, Chen Shun rolled her eyes and said, Zhang Xiaohua, are you using a trick? Zhang Xiaohu also said, yes, Xiaohua, you didn't move at all. You're different from before. Zhang Xiaohua didn't speak with a sullen face. She walked to Zhang Xiaohu and said, second brother, give me your hand. Let me see the poison in your body. Haha, it's okay. Nanjingyi said that this poison only acts up once a year. As early as 2 months ago when I took it, it had already acted up. Now I don't feel anything. Zhang Xiaohu laughed, fearing that Zhang Xiaohua would feel distressed. Zhang Xiaohua didn't speak. She held Zhang Xiaohu's wrist with her hand and carefully looked at it. She used a wisp of true qi to check it. Then her face relaxed. She took out the antidote pill from her arms and poured out one pill. She said, "Second brother, you eat it first. Let me see the effect." Xiaohua, Nanjingyi said that this poison can only be detoxified by her. Maybe Sakura and Changsheng can detoxify it. Your pill, is it okay? Chang'e said worriedly. Zhang Xiaohu didn't pay attention to Chang'e. He reached out to take it and swallowed it. It's okay, second sister-in-law. I said it can be detoxified, so it can be detoxified. Zhang Xiaohua didn't care about Chang'e's distrust. After all, she was thinking for her second brother. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Zhang Xiaohu released his hand from his wrist and said with a smile, "Second brother, if you had just taken it, I would have been able to force the poison out immediately, but it's already been 2 months. I don't have any other way." Xiaohua, is there really no way? Chang'e asked anxiously. Chen Chun also stepped forward with a pleading look on her face. Zhang Xiaohu's face suddenly turned red. He swung his hand and rushed out. "Hey you, what are you doing?" Chang'e and Chen Chen chased after him. "Don't follow," Zhang Xiaohu said anxiously. Then they heard a puff sound. Zhang Xiaohu's face turned redder, and there was a stench. At this time, how could Chang'e and Chen Chen not know? Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile behind them, "It's been 2 months. I can't force the poison out, so I have to trouble second brother to pull it out." Ha ha ha. Knowing that the detoxification pill could detoxify second brother, Zhang Xiaohua was in a good mood. Chang'e and Chen Chun had already turned red. They covered their noses and went back to the central room. Then they opened all the windows in the central room. Chen Chen hurried into the inner room. After a while, Chang'e entered the inner room, took some clothes from the inner room and handed them to Zhang Xiaohua. Her face was still red and she said, "It's all because of you. Send these clothes to your second brother." "Me? Why should I go?" Zhang Xiaohua looked innocent. She raised her hands and said, I haven't finished my words. Second brother, if you don't go, you want me to go?" Chang'e said angrily. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua had to stand up and take the clothes. This yard was almost the same as the yard of Zhang Xiaohua's Guozhuang house. There was no need to worry that Zhang Xiaohua couldn't find it. Well, Zhang Xiaohua also took water in a wooden basin by the way. After Zhang Xiaohu changed his clothes, he still looked embarrassed. He glared at Zhang Xiaohua several times, and then went back to the room. In the central room, Chang'e and Chen Chun saw Zhang Xiaohu's embarrassed look, and they both burst into laughter. "What are you laughing at? What's so funny?" Zhang Xiaohu said helplessly. "Ha ha, it would have been better if he didn't say that." After he said that, Chang'e and Chen Chen laughed even harder. It seemed that they were about to laugh out all the worries they had for Zhang Xiaohu in the past few months. "Second brother, let me have a look." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and reached out her hand. Zhang Xiaohu glared at her again. "Well, it's okay, second brother. It's not a big deal. There should be some residual poison in your body, but it won't affect you," Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Then, she handed the antidote over. "If it's okay, take 1 pill every day for 3 days. Of course. Do you need to say it?" Zhang Xiaohu grabbed it and put it in his arms. "Oh, by the way, will it be the same as just now?" Zhang Xiaohu's face was slightly red. I won't. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. Haha, that's good. The 3 of them were relieved after the big problem was solved. Chen Chen still asked, "Zhang Xiaohua, I asked you just now. Why did you come to Pingyang City? Did Abbess Jingyi send you here?" "Don't mention that old beggar again." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "I have nothing to do with the incense cult now." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and said, "Weren't you the guardian disciple of the incense cult a few months ago? You even went to the Dalan temple to deliver the invitation. Why? Did you mess up your job?" "The guardian disciple of the incense cult? Why didn't I know?" Changgu and Chen Chun said in unison. They looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu shrank his neck and did not dare to say anything. No, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, Xiaoxia, took care of it. How could I mess it up? The Martial Arts Society convention is over and everything is going well. This young hero's departure from the aroma cult has nothing to do with the mission. Another reason? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. Changgu asked, I heard that the Martial Arts Society convention was held more than half a month ago. How did you know? Chun Chun clapped his hands and said, That's great, that's great. Zhang Xiaohua, then, you can join the incense cult again, huh? The three of them asked different questions, but Zhang Xiaohu and Changgu heard Chun Chin's words, and their hearts moved. They both looked at Zhang Xiaohua. Don't. Zhang Xiaohua quickly waved her hand and said, I still have somewhere to go. Let's not talk about this for now. -4. Chapter 1061. Zhang Xiaohu was surprised. Where are you going? Didn't you follow me? To help me? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Second brother, isn't this nonsense? If I don't help you, why would I come here? Seeing that Qinshan still wanted to talk, then he said, But to help you, I don't have to join the Misty School? And, can't I also start a sect? What? You want to start a sect? The three of them exclaimed in unison, Why? Can't I? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his nose and was extremely helpless. Well, I thought about it. You've been talking about some Beidou school. Don't tell me you want to build a Beidou school. Zhang Xiaohu realized. Yes, second brother, I do have such a plan. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. But, do you know what is needed to build a sect? How do you manage your money, disciples, and livelihood? Chang'e also asked. This. How would I know? Zhang Xiaohua said with a bitter face. I only need to build this sect and let others do the rest. Ha ha ha. The three of them finally came to their senses and laughed. In their hearts, they had already decided that Zhang Xiaohua was just playing house. Well, second brother wishes your Beidou school to dominate the world and unify the world. Hearing Zhang Xiaohu's nonsensical congratulatory words, Zhang Xiaohua knew that his second brother didn't believe it at all, but he didn't say it out loud. Xiaohua, what are your plans in the future? Zhang Xiaohu just opened his mouth and shut it. Zhang Xiaohua was going to start a sect. Why should he ask? Right, Xiaohua, about the Martial Arts Society Assembly. You? Who told you about it? Chang'e remembered his question. Second sister-in-law. Zhang Xiaohua said tentatively, I went to the Martial Arts Society Assembly late and only saw the end, but I heard some things from Chun Chun. Me? Chun Chun was stunned and immediately understood that this Chun Chun was not her. Chang'e didn't mind Zhang Xiaohua's address and frowned. Xiaohua, it's not good to lie. The Martial Arts Society Assembly was held half a month ago. How could you attend it? Yeah, little flower. You. Zhang Xiaohu was also stunned. He had always believed in his brother and never doubted him. Now that he heard it, was there really no problem with the timing? I used half a month's time to chase after you from the fragrant cult to Pingyang City. Can't I? How is that possible? Chang'e and Chen Shan blurted out, but then they patted their foreheads as if they had thought of something. They both looked back at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu was calm and said after a moment, It seems that what you said at Shixin Peak last time about going back to Lingxiang Peak at night was true. Haha, of course. Zhang Xiaohua patted her chest and said, When did I lie to you? Just now. Just now. You lied to me, let me. Zhang Xiaohu thought of the detoxification pill. There will always be accidents. Then, how did you come here? Zhang Xiaohu had already begun to believe her. Is there a need to ask? Of course I flew. Zhang Xiaohua said seriously. Nonsense. Do you think you're a bird? Qin Chun said and blushed unconsciously. But then, the three of them were stunned and thought of Zhang Xiaohua flying in the air in the Yulon Grand Canyon. It had been a long time. The three of them seemed to have forgotten about it. You. Could it be? You're from the immortal Tao? Chang'e asked, pointing at Zhang Xiaohua in shock. Maybe. I'm not sure myself. Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and looked innocent. Great, great. My Misty School is saved. Chang'e almost put her hands together and thanked the heavens. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua said, Second brother, second sister-in-law, let's not talk about me. You. What's going on? After the martial arts convention, Nanjingyi announced that Misty School would leave Chuanxiang cult and rebuild it. I rushed here in a hurry and didn't inquire about it in detail. Is that so? Nun Jingyi has announced it to the world? Then the Righteous Alliance already knows? Zhang Xiaohu frowned and said, What does she mean? Hee hee, of course, the Righteous Alliance already knows. I even met a messenger on the way. But it seems that the Righteous Alliance disciples in Misty Mountain Villa don't know. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. That's good. I originally planned to rest tonight and recharge my energy and leave early tomorrow morning. Now it seems that I have to change my plan. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and stood up. I'll go arrange it. You guys wait for me. Chang'e also stood up and was about to leave when Zhang Xiaohua stopped her. Second sister-in-law, don't go yet. Tell little brother about Chuanxiang cult. But Chang'e hesitated. Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, Chang'e, tell Xiaohua about Imo Sungong. It's good that he knows more. But Chang'e was still hesitant. Although Imo Sungong's matter was very important, but it was mostly a private affair. It was all planned by Nun Jingyi. It was really difficult for her to say it herself. Senior sister, how about I say it, and you listen on the side? If it doesn't work, you can tell Zhang Xiaohua. Chun Chun was quite considerate and said softly, You guys talk. I'll leave first. Zhang Xiaohu anxiously left. As for the remaining 3 people, Chun Chun had already heard the story from Chang'e. Now that she said it, it was also very detailed. After Chun Chun finished talking about what happened in Imo Sungong, Zhang Xiaohua secretly nodded. This Nun Jingyi is really the leader of Chuanxiang cult. Her schemes are not something that ordinary people can compare to. While controlling second brother, she also inserted her own disciples into the Misty School. She used the whole Misty School as a puppet. Then she secretly raised her little tail. If I didn't get the divine hand and heal everyone's internal injuries in the Misty School, this Misty School wouldn't be surnamed Zhang, but Jingyi. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was moved. She remembered the jade slip she got from Nun Jingyang and the poison sutra of the great master Chang'e. There seemed to be a method to control others. If it worked, Nun Jingyi would go for wool but come home shorn. After thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua stood up, straightened her clothes, and saluted Chang'e properly. Second sister-in-law, I called you a little casually just now. From now on, I'll call you seriously. Chang'e didn't blush when she heard Zhang Xiaohua call her that. Now that Zhang Xiaohua suddenly became serious, her face became hot. She quickly stood up and saluted back, saying, Xiaohu and I have been through thick and thin together. It's lucky that we can have this ending. It's a great fortune to have your help in the future. Zhang Xiaohua laughed heartily, of course. If mother and father knew about this, they would be so happy that their mouths would turn crooked. Then she secretly looked at Qin Qin, who was a little sad next to her. With Nun Jingyi's approval, Chang'e was undoubtedly the wife of the faction master. But what about Chun Qin? This little tail seemed to have some resentment in her heart. Now she didn't need Nun Jingyi's approval, but Zhang Xiaohu had never been strict with her. Chang'e was also busy with the Misty School, so she didn't take Chun Qin seriously. Chang'e blushed and said in a low voice, After we take down the ethereal heights, I'll go to the Guozhuang house with Xiaohu. Qin Shan was even more unhappy when she didn't mention herself. She lowered her head and looked at the ground. Well, okay. I'll go back and tell father and mother first, so that they can be prepared. After saying that, she raised her head and saw that Zhang Xiaohu had returned. As soon as he entered the door, he asked, What did you say to father and mother? Then he understood. Xiaohua, you mean, you'll go back to the Guozhuang house first? Well, yes, second brother. Although I've asked the carriage company to send a letter to father and mother a few months ago, I'm still worried. Now I'm near Pingyang City. With my speed, I'll be home soon. I'll tell father and mother first. Well, Xiaohua, you tell father and mother that I'm really unfilial. After the Misty School is finished, Zhang Xiaohu said and stole a glance at Chang'e. Chang'e said shyly, I've already told Xiaohua. Haha, that's good. After the Misty School is finished, I'll take Chang'e back to the Guozhuang house. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile, but then he realized something and said, By the way, what about your dream? Why didn't she come? Oh my God. Only now did you remember. Zhang Xiaohu secretly despised Zhang Xiaohua and said sadly, I can't make it. Didn't Nun Jingyi allow her to come? Chen Chun was curious. Chang'e said, by the way, how did you come out of Chuanqiang's sect? We've been talking for a long time, but you haven't said a word. It's like this. Zhang Xiaohua then told the story of her and Chang'e, and finally said, Chang'e went back to the Tenryu sect with Deity Tian. After all, it's her home. After her illness is cured, we will meet again. Ah? The three of them were fascinated by the story and were almost stunned. Chang'e is Deity Tian's daughter, the daughter of the leader of the world's #1 sect, the daughter of the world's #1 martial artist, the unique saintess of the Tenryu sect. Xiaohuayu, aren't you the son-in-law of the Tenryu sect? Zhang Xiaohu murmured, you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. Go. Zhang Xiaohua really despised her second brother. Not only the son-in-law, as long as I, Xiaoxia, want to be Deity Tian in the future, it's not impossible. You want to be Deity Tian? Ha ha ha, Zhang Xiaohu grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand and laughed. I'll be the leader of the Misty School, and you'll be the leader of the Tenryu sect. We have 2 leaders of the Zhang family. That's great. That's great. Go away. Chang'e nudged Zhang Xiaohu with her elbow and showed the dignity of the wife of the leader. What do you know? The Tenryu sect is an evil cult. It's not easy to be their Deity Tian. Then she turned her head and asked, don't you think so, Xiaohua? Well, you're right. I'm now a cultivator of immortality. How can I be the Deity Tian of the Tenryu sect? It's really impossible. But, Zhang Xiaohua, if you don't become Deity Tian, how can you marry Ming? Chen Chun was very worried about their marriage. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. About this? I can only talk about it. Alas, then she looked at the sky and said, second brother, second sister-in-law, I can't talk to you anymore. It's getting late. I'd better go back to the Guozhuang house first. If I don't go back, I won't feel at ease. Then she took out a jade talisman from her arms and handed it to Zhang Xiaohu, saying, when you're about to reach the Misty Villa, crush this jade talisman. I'll help you. -4. Chapter 1062. After bidding farewell to Zhang Xiaohu, Chang'e, and Chen Chun, Zhang Xiaohua hid her figure, flew into the air, and went straight to the Guozhuang house. Zhang Xiaohua immersed her divine sense into the jade slip while flying, looking for the records about controlling people's minds. She didn't know where Nun Jinggang got the jade slip, but there was a kind of elixir called puppet pill in it. As long as someone took it, the person's mind could be controlled, and they would be obedient to the caster, no different from a puppet. However, this puppet pill had a drawback. That was, the person who took the puppet pill would really be like a puppet, with dull eyes and inconvenient movements. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head inwardly. This puppet pill definitely won't work. If it turns a group of elite outer disciples into puppets, it will lose all its effects. It's better to use Abish Jingyi's name to control them. Or, can I also refine some poison for second brother? Zhang Xiaohua thought of Nun Jingyi's means. Zhang Xiaohua had already read the things in the Poison Sutra on the way back to the incense cult. At this time, thinking carefully, she was overjoyed. There was also a kind of poison called soulless powder in the Poison Sutra, which was also used to make people lose their minds and be controlled by others. It was just that the time of losing one's mind was shorter. However, during this period, the poisoned person's appearance would be the same as usual, and even his martial arts would not be affected. Oh, putting the 2 elixirs together. Will it work? Zhang Xiaohua was happy and began to think about the formula of the puppet pill and soulless powder. The soulless powder was a martial art item, and the poison and herbs in the formula didn't seem too rare. However, the puppet pill was different. It was used in immortality, and the herbs used in it made Zhang Xiaohua scratch her head. But after looking at the back, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. I don't know if it's I or Zhang Xiaohu's luck, but all the herbs are in I's belt. Of course, the herbs used to refine the puppet pill were all grown in Yin, and the requirements were very special. They were usually very rare, but when Zhang Xiaohua first arrived at Lingxiang Peak, didn't she go to Lichui Valley? It was called the Ghost Valley, and the herbs had long been eroded by the black fog. The ghost mushroom was also the main ingredient of the puppet pill. Could it be that the disciples of the incense cult keep the things in the valley? Is this Jing Gang's idea? Or else, how could that guy Yu Zhuochuan enter the valley so easily? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Unfortunately, these two people had already become Zhang Xiaohua's ghosts. As for the specific reason, Zhang Xiaohua would never know. Well, when I'm free, I'll refine the puppet pill and the soulless powder together. Maybe it will work. This is I's creation, so I have to give it a nice name. How about soulless pill? Zhang Xiaohua thought, and her spiritual awareness swept down. She couldn't help but feel happy. She saw the stars in the sky and the lights on the ground. Now she was already above Lu Town, Guozhuang House. Zhang Xiaohua's spiritual awareness swept north like a waterfall. She wanted to see her hometown as soon as possible. Who is this? Zhang Xiaohua's spiritual awareness swept over the village entrance of the Guozhuang House. She saw a beggar in ragged clothes, holding a broken jar, and staggering out of the Guozhuang House. If she saw a beggar in Lu Town, Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't be surprised. However, the Guozhuang House was a small village. Usually, there were small farmers living there. Everyone's family was not well off. How could there be a beggar here? What happened next was even more surprising. After the beggar left the village, he looked back as if he hadn't had enough. Only then did he walk quickly to the small path by the river. At the end of the path, on the official road from the Guozhuang House to Lu Town, there was already a person riding a horse. His hand was holding the reins of another horse. When the beggar got on the official road, he looked around and saw that there was no one around. He turned around and mounted the horse, heading straight north. When Zhang Xiaohua flew closer, the two people were already far away. Zhang Xiaohua stroked her chin. Just as she was thinking about whether she should chase after them to take a look, she saw in her spiritual awareness a small courtyard that she was familiar with. A white and fat child was holding a small wooden stick. Under the light of the lantern under the eaves, he was chasing a group of chickens around the courtyard. At this moment, the door to the central room was pushed open. An old woman walked out with a handful of dates in her hand and chased after the child. Mother, Zhang Xiaohua instantly stopped in midair. How could she still think about the beggar? In a flash, she flew to the sky above the small courtyard. Zhang Xiaohua had just steadied herself in midair. Before she could reveal herself, the white and fat child immediately stopped. He lifted his little face and blinked his big eyes, staring straight at the sky. The old woman was chasing after him. When she saw the child stop, she quickly stuffed a date into his mouth. She looked outside and shouted, "Xiaohua, ah?" Zhang Xiaohua, who was in midair, was so shocked that she almost fell from the sky. It was fine if Zhang Byron could see her, but her mother didn't even lift her head. She actually called out her name. Could it be that her mother was also a person of the immortal Tao? Mother, Zhang Xiaohua was filled with longing, emotion, and longing. She landed from the sky and called out softly, "I told you to look after the child. Where did you go? Hurry." Guosufei scolded without lifting her head. But then another voice sounded from the pigsty. "Madam, you called for me?" Ah, Guosufei was stunned. Zhang Xiaohua was also stunned. Of course, another thin young man came from the pigsty. Guosufei suddenly turned around and saw Zhang Xiaohua still floating in midair. Beside him, the young Zhang Byron was poking him with a small stick. "Xiaohua? Is that you?" Guosufei rubbed her eyes hard. "Mother, of course it's me. I'm Xiaohua." Zhang Xiaohua landed on the ground. "Ah, my Xiaohua, you're finally back." Guosufei was a little heartbroken. She shouted, "Old man, come out quickly. Our Xiaohua is back." Then she said to the Xiaohua who appeared behind her, "Xiaohua, go and call your big brother. Tell him that Xiaohua is back." When the Xiaohua heard this, she was so happy that she couldn't even close her mouth. She jumped and ran out of the courtyard. "Mother, what's going on? Why is there a Xiaohua in our house?" Zhang Xiaohua was really puzzled. Could it be that her mother missed her and picked up a child from outside? Go, Byron. Don't poke your third uncle with a stick." Guosufei scolded Zhang Byron and carried him up. Zhang Byron obediently lay in his grandmother's arms and said, "Grandmother, he flew from the sky." No, he walked. Although Zhang Byron was young, he could still speak clearly. His eyes were curiously looking at Little Black and Little Yellow who were on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulders. Hearing his grandmother's words, he poked Little Black with the stick again. Guasufei didn't care if her son flew or ran. She slapped Zhang Byron's butt and laughed. "What nonsense are you talking about? This is your third uncle, not the immortal in the stories." Before she finished speaking, Zhang Kai rushed out of the room and ran to Zhang Xiaohua's side. He didn't go near her and looked her up and down. He nodded slightly, "Not bad. You haven't changed. You look about the same as 2 years ago." Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were a little moist. She smiled and looked at her father who didn't go forward but missed her as much as her mother did. While they were talking, the door was pushed open with a bang. Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian also ran in. When they saw Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaolong's face was filled with joy. He rushed over and hugged Zhang Xiaohua in his arms. He smiled and said, "Someone sent a letter a few days ago saying that you were in the south. Worry-free city. Why are you back today?" "Io, big brother, relax a little. I can't breathe." Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "Hee, Xiaohua, I haven't seen you in 2 years. You haven't changed at all. How strange." Lu Qian walked to Zhang Xiaohua's side and said with a smile. Zhang Byron stretched out his arms to look for his mother. Lu Qian reached out and hugged him. Zhang Byron chuckled and threw the stick away. With small hands, he wanted little Martin and little dog. Seeing that the house was so warm, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, you're the same as before you married big brother. You're even more beautiful. What reason do you have?" These words were exactly what Lu Qian was thinking. After marrying into the Guozhuang house for 7 to 8 years, she indeed didn't change much. After giving birth to Zhang Byron, she became even more beautiful. As for Lu Yeye, who was younger than her, now, it was too horrible to look at. Seeing that Zhang Byron liked the two little things, Zhang Xiaohua took Little Black and Little Yellow off her shoulder and handed them to Zhang Byron. The two little things had already looked at Zhang Byron for a long time. At this time, they didn't reject and obediently allowed Zhang Byron to hug them. At this time, the young man standing behind Lu Qian walked forward and said respectfully, "Young master, you're back?" "Young master?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned at first, then she came to a realization. Then, she looked at the young man's head in disbelief and shouted, "Ji Xiaohua? Your scabby head. Where did you go? Wasn't this person Ji Xiaohua?" It was no wonder that Zhang Xiaohua didn't recognize Ji Xiaohua now. Not to mention that it was night now, and only lanterns were used to illuminate the area. Not to mention that Zhang Xiaohua hadn't seen Ji Xiaohua for more than 2 years. Now, Ji Xiaohua was much taller than before and also much fatter. She was no longer the little firewood of the past. Just the disappearance of his striking scabby head alone made Zhang Xiaohua at a loss. It was old madam who cured it with a folk prescription. Ji Xiaohua didn't care at all about Zhang Xiaohua's words and answered respectfully, "What old madam or young madam? Didn't I tell you to call her godmother?" Guasufei was displeased. "Isn't that so? This Xiaohua is really polite. How many times have I said it? She still calls me old madam and young master Xiaolong. She even calls me young master Byron." Lu Qian also laughed. "But aren't you in Songning town? Why did you run to Guozhuang house?" Zhang Xiaohua was still puzzled. "Oh right, where's Annie? She wouldn't have stayed in Songning town, right?" Ji Xiaohua's eyes reddened at the mention of his mother. He carefully said, "Young master, I was on my way to Guozhuang when my mother was sick. It wasn't easy for me to find this place. She was already on her last breath. She only let go when she saw me deliver the message that young master wanted." "Message? What message do I want?" "You guys." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and suddenly remembered that she met the Misty School's disciple Chu Yunfei in the wilderness outside Songning town. Yes, wasn't it she who told him that if there was any news about Zhang Xiaohu, Chu Yunfei should bring it to Ji Xiaohua in Songning town? She also planned to return to Songning town after sending Nie Qinyu off. But, since she had already arrived at the fragrance cult and met Zhang Xiaohu, Songning town had actually been forgotten. -4. Chapter 1063. By the way, young master, that person wanted me to tell you that Zhang Xiaohu is not with them, and they don't know where that gang is. After 2 years, Xiaohua finally delivered this sentence to Zhang Xiaohua's ears. In Xiaohuaji, thank you, I got it. My second brother is not there. He is in the south. In father, mother, eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law, second brother is fine. Everything is fine in a few days. He will bring second sister-in-law back. Ah, really? Guosufei almost cried tears of joy. Although Xiaohuaji brought news, it was useless news, and it made Guosufei miss it more these 2 years. When she saw Zhang Xiaohua just now, Guosufei did not dare to ask. She was afraid that Zhang Xiaohua would bring back bad news. But as Zhang Xiaohua kept talking about other things, her heart sank. Now that she heard the heavenly news, and Zhang Xiaohua would bring back the second daughter-in-law of the Zhang family, how could she not be happy? Come in first, come in first. Zhang Kai called. No, mother. Where is Annie buried? I will pay my respects first. Zhang Xiaohua said. Oh, good, good, good. Zhang Kai and Guosufei were stunned. Until now, they suddenly realized that Zhang Xiaohua, who they thought was still young, had already grown up and knew how to be grateful. Madame Zhang's grave was also behind the house, not far from her grandmother's grave. Zhang Xiaohua paid her respects in front of her grandmother's grave, then went to Madame Zhang's grave to pay her respects. According to etiquette, Zhang Xiaohua knelt in front of her mother's grave to pay her respects. After paying her respects, Zhang Xiaohua stood in front of the grave and said, Zhang, Auntie, don't worry, Ji Xiaohua came to Guozhuang House today. I will not treat him badly in the future. I will make him a world-famous figure. Xiaohua was also happy to hear this, and kowtowed to the grave. Mother, you see, young master has already said that I will definitely become a big figure. You can rest in peace in the underworld. Guosufei and the others were also wiping their tears. Only Zhang Byron was still waving the small wooden stick, which seemed to be a weapon. Everyone returned to the central house, which had been expanded. The wall of the house on the west side was demolished, and the two houses were combined into one big house. Sitting in the central house, Ji Xiaohua told Zhang Xiaohua about her visit in detail. It turned out that Zhang Xiaohua had saved Chu Yunfei less than half a month ago, and he asked someone to deliver the news that Zhang Xiaohu was not with them to Soning Town. When Madame Zhang heard that it was Zhang Xiaohua who wanted the news, she immediately became anxious. Madame Zhang was careful and knew that Zhang Xiaohua did not want people to know her home, so she sent someone to deliver the message. Presumably, she would come back to find her in the future, so it would be inappropriate for her to ask someone to deliver the message. But thinking that Zhang Xiaohua had just left, Madame Zhang asked others and knew that Lu Town was very far from Soning Town, so it would take at least a year to come and go. She was also afraid of delaying Zhang Xiaohua's matter. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohu's name was similar to Zhang Xiaohua's, so they should be close relatives. How could Madame Zhang rest assured to let Ji Xiaohua go to Lu Town alone? After thinking about it, Madame Zhang had no choice but to drag her body, which had already recovered, on the journey. There was no need to mention the miserable journey. When they arrived at Pingyang City, they were almost no different from beggars. Madame Zhang was very sick, and she did not dare to inquire about it at Huanqi Mountain Villa. She only knew that it was a place for people in the pugilistic world, so she did not dare to ask about it in detail. Instead, she went to Lu Town. At that time, Madame Zhang was already beyond cure, but she did not dare to give up. Firstly, she was worried about her 9-year-old son, and secondly, she had not sent the message to Zhang Xiaohua. However, Zhang Xiaohua was not in Lu Town in the first place. How could they find her? It was not until an extremely coincidental opportunity that the two begged for food at Li Jinfeng's house and asked if he knew Zhang Xiaohua. Li Jinfeng's father was shocked. Under interrogation, Madame Zhang did not mention the reason for looking for Zhang Xiaohua. Instead, because Li Jinfeng's father knew Zhang Xiaohua, they stayed in the shop and did not go out again. Seeing that Madame Zhang was about to die, and that Ji Xiaohua was only a child less than 10 years old, Li Jinfeng's father knew that they would not bring any harm to Zhang Xiaohua's family. Thus, he got a carriage and sent the two of them to Guozhuang House. When they arrived at Guozhuang House, Madame Zhang only heard her son say those words to Guosufei, which was to die. At the last moment, he was still holding Ji Xiaohua's hand. How could Zhang Kai and Guosufei not be moved by Madame Zhang's righteous act? They buried Madame Zhang behind their own house, and Ji Xiaohua was also left in Guozhuang house. Ji Xiaohua had been clever since childhood and was used to living a poor life. Now, it was almost like heaven in the Zhang family. She was busy every day, helping Guosufei and Zhang Kai with the chores. She also helped Lu Qian take care of the children. Everyone liked her, and Guosufei even recognized Xiaohua as her godson. However, Ji Xiaohua never dared to agree. In his heart, he regarded Zhang Xiaohua as a young master. He did not dare to claim connections. After listening to Ji Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaohua sighed in her heart and said, "Aunt's matter is indeed my fault. I didn't think it through. Xiaohua, in the future, you will follow us." "Do I need you to say that?" Guosufei glared at her. "Xiaohua has long been a member of our family." "No, no, mother. How can there be a difference between two Xiaohuas in this family? You have to think of a way," Zhang Xiaohua said in a spoiled manner. "Young master, how about I change my name?" Xiaohua said carefully. Fainting, Zhang Xiaohua patted his shoulder and said, "Xiaohua's name is so nice. There are so many people in the world who want to be called by it. Why do you want to change your name?" "But it's convenient for old madam to call it." Just kidding, just kidding." Zhang Xiaohua saw that Ji Xiaohua was so careful and could only say, "Xiaohua, don't worry. Mother's name is Xiaohua. I definitely know who she is. I won't mess it up." "Oh right, Xiaohua, have you eaten?" Lu Qian suddenly asked. "Not yet," the two Xiaohuas said in unison. "Ha." The whole room laughed. "Hee hee, sister-in-law." Zhang Xiaohua glanced at Lu Qian and said, "After a while, second sister-in-law will come. You can't bully me like this." "Second sister-in-law?" Guosufei keenly grasped the key word and said, "Why are you still saying second sister-in-law?" "Hee hee." Zhang Xiaohua laughed evilly and said, "Second brother has found two wives. However, one has already been revealed. The other hasn't been revealed yet." "Really? Or is it fake? Xiaohu is so powerful." Zhang Xiaolong's face was full of envy. "Why? Do you also want to?" Lu Qian glared at him. No, I'm just asking. Zhang Xiaolong said embarrassedly. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and was about to say something when she suddenly looked at the sky outside and said, "Mother, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It's time to sleep." "I'm still sleeping in the small room." After saying that, Zhang Xiaohua rushed out of the room and went straight to the small room. Little Black and Little Yellow immediately jumped out of Zhang Byron's arms and followed. "Don't rush. Xiaohua is sleeping in the small room now. I'll switch with you," Guosufei shouted. Lu Qian also said, "Xiaohua, come to our courtyard." Unfortunately, when they arrived at the small room, Zhang Xiaohua was already sitting cross-legged on the Kong bed in the small room. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaolong hurriedly stopped everyone. He said in a low voice, "I heard that all experts train like this. Mother, let's go quickly. Don't let Xiaohua go crazy." Guosufei and the others were frightened and quickly retreated. However, someone was not willing to do it. Who? Zhang Byron. The little guy opened his mouth and looked as if he was about to cry. He reached out and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua and the other two little things beside her who were already squinting their eyes. "Byron, this can't be. Uncle is practicing. If you go, he will go crazy." Lu Qian did not dare to let the child go and quickly left with him. Wog, the sound was so loud that it shook the small courtyard. No matter how Lu Qian tried to coax him, he would ignore her. Even if she tried to feed him, he would ignore her. She used all the coaxing tricks in the past, but it was useless. The sound of his crying echoed through the night sky. It was really noisy. "Do you want to play with Puppy and Little Martin?" As Zhang Xiaolong spoke, he reached out to hug Blackie and Goldie. Who would have thought that just as he placed his hands on Blackie, Blackie would open its eyes and let out a low hiss. It was extremely sharp and fierce. Then, it closed its eyes again, giving Zhang Xiaolong a fright. "I guess these two little things will follow Xiaohua tonight." Zhang Xiaolong took a few steps back and said helplessly, "What should we do?" Lu Qian had no choice but to look at Zhang Xiaolong. Zhang Xiaolong looked at Zhang Kai, and Zhang Kai looked at Guosufei. Why don't we try to carry Byron over? Guosufei was also very hesitant. She did not dare to take the risk. Let's try. I remember when Xiaohua was sleeping. She also shook him. Zhang Kai was a little tempted. Sure enough, as soon as they got close to the house, Zhang Byron stopped crying. His eyes were filled with tears, and his dark pupils were rolling around. Lu Qian carried Zhang Byron. Zhang Byron was very obedient. He was placed on the Kong bed. He turned over and went to Zhang Xiaohua's side. He ignored Little Black and Little Yellow. His limbs were in the sky, and he slowly closed his eyes. In the dark night, the starlight formed a cocoon. It was invisible to the naked eye. Zhang Byron was lying next to Zhang Xiaohua. A lot of the starlight was unconsciously absorbed by Zhang Byron's body. Lu Qian looked at Zhang Xiaolong next to her and smiled bitterly. Let him sleep next to Xiaohua. Byron is, Zhang Xiaolong said with a smile. Maybe Byron and Xiaohua are fated to be together? What if the child wakes up at night? What if he wants to find us? What if he is thirsty and hungry? Lu Qian said countless things in one breath. What do you think? If we carry Byron away now, he will definitely cry. I guess the whole Guozhuang house will not be able to sleep well. Young master, I will stay here. As long as the young master wakes up and makes a fuss, I will go to find you immediately. Xiaohua said carefully. Xiaohua, is it so difficult to call me big brother? Zhang Xiaolong rolled his eyes. Don't blame Xiaohua. Wait until tomorrow, let Xiaohua talk to Xiaohua. Lu Qian didn't finish her sentence. She was happy. Let's go. It's late. Let Xiaohua stay here first. After 4 hours, Xiaolong will come again. Guosufei's excitement had passed. She was obviously sleepy and said with a yawn. Well, everything will wait until tomorrow. Zhang Kai made a concluding speech. Everyone went back. Xiaohua hugged the quilt and waited at the door of the small house. The night in the Guozhuang house was quiet. Occasionally, there was the sound of dogs barking, teeth grinding, bed creaking, children crying, crickets chirping, frogs croaking. There were so many sounds, but it was full of the sweetness of the countryside and the smell of life. After a long time, Xiaohua was so sleepy that she fell asleep. She leaned against the door and a stream of sparkling saliva fell down. Outside the Guo Manor, there was a group of people, about 20 of them. They were riding on horses and were rushing over. -4. Chapter 1064. At this time, the moon was already slanting and the stars were sparse. The night was getting darker and the official road was so quiet that not a single person could be seen. Suddenly, the sound of horses galloping could be heard from afar. It was a group of people dressed in black and wearing black masks that covered their mouths and noses, leaving only their eyes exposed. These people held torches and weapons in their hands. As they ran, they carefully observed the road. When they reached the small path of the Guozhuang house, a skinny man in front of them frowned and slowed down his horse. The youngest? Is it here? A strong man behind him whispered with a long knife in his hand. It should be, big brother. However, it's hard to see clearly at night. The sides of the mountain path are also the same. It's extremely difficult to distinguish. The eldest frowned and scolded. I let you pretend to be a beggar here for 2 days. How can you not even remember the road? Do I still dare to listen to your words? Calm down, big brother. Calm down. The youngest immediately smiled and said, although I didn't remember the road well, I've investigated the situation of the Zhang family very clearly. Bullshit. How can there be any rich people in this small mountain village? I can find out even if I use my heels. Why would I need to investigate? I don't know how the people from the Storm Carriage Company do things. When we miss this time, I'll definitely report them to the Banner Lord. Calm down, big brother. The Storm Carriage Company said clearly that the young man who delivered the letter used an ingot of gold to exchange for silver. Think about it. Why would a normal person carry an ingot of gold with them? They must be very rich. It's just that I didn't expect the young man's letter to be delivered to this small mountain village. What's the young man's name? Maybe he's rich and his family isn't? Reporting to Big Brother, I've already investigated that young man. If I'm not mistaken, he should be called Zhang Xiaohua. He came back 2 years ago and then went out again. However, according to the villagers, before Zhang Xiaohua came back, the Zhang family didn't have much money. But in the past 2 years, they seemed to be very rich. They bought cattle and a few pieces of land. They were also very generous to the other people in the Guozhuang house. So, everyone in the Guozhuang house said that Zhang Xiaohua got lucky and made a fortune. They were all jealous. Hee, isn't that so? Didn't I say so? As long as I ask around, what else do I not know? Actually, the youngest hesitated for a moment and said, Actually, I think. I'm afraid that the Zhang family's money wasn't earned by their son, Zhang Xiaohua. Who is that? Oh, it's here. Boss, if you follow this road, you'll reach the Guozhuang house. I'll lead the way for you. The youngest said happily. There's no need for that. We're already here. What's the point of leading the way? Tell me quickly, where did the Zhang family get their money from? It's like this, boss. The Zhang family has 3 sons. The eldest is called Zhang Xiaolong. He's a farmer and married an extremely beautiful wife. 2 years ago, they gave birth to a son. Beautiful wife? The eldest swallowed his saliva and his Adam's apple bobbed. Yes, she's really beautiful. When I saw her from afar, my heart also itched. Hee. The youngest smiled and said, This little one is called Zhang Xiaohua. It's said that he's a manservant in a villa in Pingyang City and knows some martial arts. I'm guessing that there's only Huan Shi Villa in Pingyang City. How is that possible? There are many villas in Pingyang City. How can you be so sure? The eldest asked suspiciously. Listen to me first. The youngest said calmly, the second son of their family is called Zhang Xiaohu. I heard from the people in the Guozhuang house that he joined a Miao sect as a disciple. Boss, what other Miao sect do you think there is in Pingyang City? It must be the Misty School. There's actually a Misty School remnants home here? The eldest perked up. Not only that, I've also found out that Zhang Xiaohu, a disciple of the Misty School, had appeared in the Guozhuang house after the Misty School was annihilated. His younger brother, Zhang Xiaohua, was also not at home. He only appeared 2 years ago. The house of the Zhang family was built after Zhang Xiaohu left. Boss, do I have to say more? We've caught a big fish. Zhang Xiaohu must have hidden the assets of the Misty School. That's why the Zhang family is wealthy. The gold used by Zhang Xiaohua was not earned by him. It must have been taken from the Misty School. Let's not talk about the gold and silver. As long as we take away the Zhang family, the Banner Lord will probably give us a lot of rewards. Boss, you're wise. But I still think we should get the gold and silver first. Do I need you to say that? The eldest scolded. Then he looked at the sky and said, There's still some time before dawn. It's a good time to kill and rob. Quick, do it as soon as possible and return to Shitsue Mountain. Yes, boss. The youngest waved his hand and said, Brothers, this is the Guozhuang house. Other than the family in the south of the village, there's only one family in the middle of the village who claims to be the head of the village who is rich. You should think. Stop talking nonsense. The eldest ordered, We're here to make a fortune. Of course, we have to find rich people. You. Go to the head of the family. The rest of you, follow me to the Zhang family and surround them. Yes. Everyone obeyed the order and entered the village with torches. The bandits of Shitsue Mountain didn't hide their tracks. As soon as they entered the village, the rapid sound of horses' hooves woke the whole village up. Every small courtyard was lit up. The brothers of Shitsue Mountain are here to do things. Don't be long-winded. Go to sleep. The eldest roared, which was like a thunder in the sky above the Guozhuang house. In an instant, the lights that had been lit were gradually extinguished one by one. Even the lights of the Zhang family were extinguished. However, it didn't take long for the deafening sound of horses' hooves to stop at the door of the house. Then there was the sound of knocking on the door and a noisy voice. Zhang Kai, old man, give me your gold and silver jewelry. I can spare your life. Or, I'll destroy your whole family. Zhang Kai and Guosufei trembled. They were so scared that they didn't dare to light up the lights. They whispered, "Old man, how did the bandits of Shitsua Mountain know that we have gold and silver jewelry?" How would I know? Zhang Kai also trembled. "I didn't tell anyone. Even Mr. Liu didn't tell. What should we do? Will it be the same as Mr. Wu from the neighboring village a few years ago?" Guo Sufei immediately thought of the incident where the neighboring village was destroyed by the bandits of Shitsue Mountain a few years ago. How would I know? Zhang Kai lost his sense of propriety. Pa, there was a sound of knocking on the window. The two elders were so scared that they almost jumped up. "Mother, father, are you okay? Come out quickly." Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian climbed over the wall. Why are you here? Why didn't you run away?" The two elders trembled and opened the door. At this time, Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian were at the door. Xiaohuaji had also woken up. She stood at the door with a panicked expression. "Xiaolong, what should we do? The bandits of Shitsue Mountain are here." Guo Sufei said with a trembling voice. "Mother, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If they came last night, it would be a disaster. But didn't Xiaohua come back tonight? There's him too." "Oh right, Xiaohua." Guo Sufei and Zhang Kai suddenly realized that their youngest son was at home. But then, the two panicked again. If I had known earlier, the bandits would have come last night. Xiaohua, my poor Xiaohua. She just came home and encountered these disasters." The knocking on the door became louder. The bandits had already started to pry open the door. Those with slightly better martial arts were already thinking about how to climb over the wall. Fortunately, the wall between the two courtyards of the Zhang family was very short. The surrounding walls were quite high. For a while, the bandits couldn't enter. "Mother, take this." Zhang Xiaolong handed over 2 jade slips. "What is this?" Guo Sufei asked curiously. "Mother, did you forget? This was given by Xiaohua when she left last time. She said that it can be used for defense. I even tried it." I remember." Guo Sufei immediately took out a jade slip from her jacket and said, "I also have it with me, but I just forgot." "Mother, quickly crush it," Lu Qian urged. "Okay." At this moment, Guo Sufei obeyed. She exerted force in her fingers and crushed the jade talisman. A faint light that was invisible to the naked eye flashed, and a defensive light barrier appeared around Guo Sufei. "Here, Xiaohua." Zhang Xiaolong handed the 2 jade slips to Ji Xiaohua. Ji Xiaohua took one and was about to crush it. "Not this." Zhang Xiaolong hurriedly stopped her. "The red one can be used to get angry. It can be used on the bandits. This one is for your own use." "Yes, young master." Xiaohua still didn't forget to address Zhang Xiaolong. When the 5 of them crushed the defensive jade slips, Zhang Xiaolong just distributed the remaining jade slips in his hand to everyone. The door of the Zhang family was pried open by the bandits. More than 10 people swarmed in and surrounded the 5 of them. There were some lights outside the wall. They should be the bandits who were guarding outside. When the leader entered the courtyard, he immediately stared at Lu Qian like a wolf who saw a little white rabbit. Zhang Xiaolong frowned and blocked Lu Qian behind him. The boss coughed and looked at Zhang Kai, who turned pale with fright. He smiled and said, "Old Master Zhang, I'm not talented. I'm living in Shichui Mountain. I heard that your family has some extra money. Can you share some with us?" Zhang Kai said angrily, "Who told you that my family is rich? Look at our Guozhuang house. Which family is rich? They're all so poor that they can't even make a sound. Are you guys mistaken?" "Old man, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I am talking to you nicely, but you are not honest. Forget it. Forget it. Brothers, let's capture these people first and search the house. I don't believe that the disciples of the Misty School did not leave money for their family before escaping. Oh, right, that little girl must be gentle. If she is tactful, she may become your sister-in-law in the future." The leader said lecherously. Ha ha ha, everyone laughed. A few of them stepped forward. "Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. Come to vote recommendation and monthly. -4. Chapter 1065. Inside the small house, Zhang Xiaohua was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed. She didn't know what was happening outside. Little Black and Little Yellow had already woken up when the West Jade Mountain bandits knocked on the door. However, they only opened their eyes lazily, as if everything in the distance had nothing to do with them. They closed their eyes again to enjoy the starlight. After listening to their boss's vulgar words, the bandits burst into laughter. A few of them quickly stepped forward with weapons in their hands, ready to threaten Zhang Kai and the others. Zhang Xiaolong was furious. He flicked his hand and threw out a jade talisman. What is this? That bandit's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He grabbed it and looked at it carefully under the light of the fire. He laughed and said, "Big brother, you really found the right person. Look, this is a piece of top-grade jade. This guy actually threw it to me." TSK, I knew it. The Misty School's money must be here, the boss said with a smile. Ji Xiaohua was careful. Seeing that Zhang Xiaolong's jade talisman didn't work, she didn't rush to throw out her own jade talisman. She waited for a bandit to come closer and threw the jade talisman at the bandit's body. Haha. The bandit saw it and couldn't help but laugh. This kid also has a jade talisman. TSK, I was also hit by the jade talisman. Estimating that he couldn't catch the jade talisman, the bandit simply didn't catch it. He only used his body to block it and prepared to catch it with his hands to prevent the jade talisman from falling and breaking. Who knew that when the jade talisman hit the bandit's body, there was a light paw sound. A faint red spark suddenly appeared and instantly ignited the bandit's clothes. What is this? The bandit's greedy eyes that stared at the jade talisman instantly turned into surprise. When he waved his hands to slap the flame, his hands were also ignited by the flame. His eyes turned into fear. The flame in the jade talisman wasn't like normal fire. It burned very quickly. When the bandit's hands were ignited, it had already burned through his clothes and was burning his skin. "Boss, this is a little weird. It hurts. Hurry and save me." The bandit shouted and ran to his boss's side. The other bandits who were pouncing on Zhang Kai and the others were also frightened. While they were in a daze, Zhang Xiaolong, Lu Qian, and the others each threw out the jade talismans in their hands. Pa, 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 pa. Another 4 light sounds were heard. The other 4 were also set on fire. In an instant, it became lively. No one shouted. In the courtyard, they wanted to put out the fire. The bandits saw that the flames were strange, so they did not dare to go forward. Several people picked up the buckets next to the stove, scooped up the water from the water tank, and poured it on the 5 people. It would be better if they did not water it, but if they did, it would be worse. The Zhang family's water tank was filled with mountain spring water, which was rich in the energy of heaven and earth. Now that it was poured on the fire, wouldn't it be adding fuel to the fire? The fire on the 5 of them burned even more fiercely. But then, in the space of a few breaths, the 5 of them lay on the ground, no longer struggling. A moment later, the 5 of them were reduced to ashes, along with their weapons. At this time, the 5 clusters of flames were slowly extinguished. The 5 of them died very quickly. The boss had just thought of running away when the 5 of them were reduced to ashes. Run. This was the boss's first thought. But before he could turn around, a few footsteps came from outside the door. A few of the bandits who had gone to the clan leader's house earlier walked in with bloody weapons in their hands and a few big packages. They laughed and said, "Big brother, the harvest is quite bountiful. Here you are." What they saw were the pale faces of more than 10 bandits. Run. The boss didn't have time to explain in detail and was about to urge them. Why run? Did you succeed? The bandits didn't think much of it. But when they saw that the bandits were empty-handed, they laughed and said, "We haven't entered the alley yet. Why are you leaving?" "You." The boss was angry. He was about to leave first, but his eyes turned and he said, "I'll leave them to you. If you capture the 5 of them, I'll give you an extra 10%. "Really? Boss, you're the one who said it." The bandits threw the packages on the ground. They must be filled with gold, silver, and jewels. Then, they took the bloody weapons and ran forward. The boss's eyes were wide open. His feet were also in a running posture. If Zhang Xiaolong threw out the strange jade piece again, he would be the first to run. Who knew that when the bandits were close, Zhang Xiaolong didn't throw it out? Lu Qian whispered, Xiaolong, didn't Xiaohua give you a lot? Where did you put it? This. Zhang Xiaolong's face was red. Don't they have to pull it in spring and autumn? I used the jade talisman to light the fire. You. Lu Qian was so angry that she almost wanted to kick him. But at this time, the bandit was close. He looked back at the boss and said with a sinister smile, Big brother, I helped you capture the little girl. If you have used her before, can you give it to me? Seeing that there was no jade talisman, the boss was emboldened. He nodded and said, Capture her first. Everything is up to you. Yes. The bandit took the order and reached out to grab Lu Qian's arm. Who knew that when the bandit's hand touched Lu Qian's arm, a flexible force immediately appeared and flicked his hand to the side. Strange, the bandit said and tried to grab again. But he was still blocked. The remaining bandits were like him. They couldn't even touch the Zhang family. One of the bandits was angry. He picked up the bloody weapon and slashed at Zhang Xiaolong. But the weapon was like a hand. When it reached Zhang Xiaolong's neck, it seemed to be unable to cut further. Zhang Xiaolong was so scared that he closed his eyes and shrunk his neck. How can this be? The bandits were dumbfounded. They raised their weapons and slashed at the 5 people. But there seemed to be an invisible wall around the 5 people, blocking the weapons. They couldn't hurt the 5 people at all. The bandits were dumbfounded. Guo Sufei and Zhang Kai's faces gradually regained color. They felt more at ease because Zhang Xiaohua gave them a lot of defensive jade talismans that day. She was afraid that they would cause trouble, so she gave them less offensive jade talismans. It seemed that even if 1 jade talisman couldn't kill them, 2 or 3 jade talismans would be no problem. Boss, what should we do? The bandits were a little discouraged. The boss looked at the 5 people standing in front of the door and scratched his head. He couldn't catch them and couldn't cut them. It was really difficult. Was this the secret skill of the Misty School? Suddenly, the boss's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, Since we can't catch them, we can tie them up with ropes. As long as we capture them to Shitsue Mountain, I don't believe that their secret skill will protect them for a lifetime. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaolong and the other 4 people were shocked. The bandit was right. The 5 of them couldn't touch them, but, after all, they could tie them up with ropes or throw them on horses or carriages. When they reached Shitsue Mountain, no matter how many jade talismans they had, there would be a time when they ran out. Lu Qian's eyes turned quickly. Suddenly, she saw the hut and had a plan in mind. She kicked Zhang Xiaolong with her foot and glanced at the hut. Zhang Xiaolong saw it and immediately understood. The jade talismans were given by Zhang Xiaohua. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was in the hut. As long as Zhang Xiaohua woke up and threw a few fire talismans, who would be afraid of the bandits? But he looked at the sky. It seemed that there was still some time before dawn. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaolong stepped forward and said, Heroes, listen to me. What? Kid, are you afraid? If you have something to say it quickly. The boss saw that his intimidation was effective and said proudly, Gentlemen, you're only here for money. Although my Zhang family doesn't have much money, if you gentlemen are willing, you can take all the money. As long as you spare the lives of the 5 members of my family, everything is negotiable. Good. This is a hero, sensible and knows when to advance and retreat. The boss clapped his hands. Thank you for your praise. Zhang Xiaolong said with a smile. In the next room, there are a few jade hairpins in the dressing box. At the bottom left corner of the Kong, there is a piece of mud brick. Take it down. There are a few banknotes inside. You, go and take a look. The boss was a little worried. Although Zhang Xiaolong didn't say much, he still asked someone to take it. Sure enough, the bandit came back quickly with the things Zhang Xiaolong just said in his hand. Is there anything else? The boss smiled. Zhang Xiaolong hesitated and said, In the woodshed in the south, there is a shabby wooden box on the ground against the west wall. There are a few banknotes inside. Hey, Lu Qian said in surprise. Zhang Xiaolong, why are there banknotes in the woodshed? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Madam, don't blame me. That is my private stash. You You dare to hide your private stash. Father, mother, you must uphold justice for me. Lu Qian actually started to cry at this time. Hee, little girl. You see, your husband actually hid his private stash behind your back. Maybe he is hiding a mistress in a golden house. This person is no longer reliable. I think it is better for you to come with me. We can enjoy ourselves in Shichui Mountain. The boss took the opportunity to say, Is that so? You are right, but being a bandit is really hard. I have to be on the edge. I am afraid I can't take it. Lu Qian said sweetly. I will let little girl know that I am not. Speaking until here, the boss seemed to have realized something and stopped talking. He looked at the bandit next to him and scolded. Why are you still not going to find your private stash? However, after a long time, the bandit came back empty-handed and said, Boss, I found the box, but there is no private stash. Impossible, Zhang Xiaolong shouted. I put it there myself yesterday. Then he realized and turned back. You even took my private stash. Hee, Lu Qian sneered. You think I don't know? I have already seen through your disloyalty. Now that all your private stash is gone, I will see how you go out. Zhang Xiaolong glared at her. The boss looked at the sky and scolded. Stop arguing. If you continue to argue, you will be put on the carriage. Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian stopped talking and looked at the sky worriedly. Old boy, quickly say it. Your eldest son has already said it. If you don't say it, he will say it in vain. I will also take all of you away. Zhang Kai seemed to have understood Zhang Xiaolong's meaning at this time. He also thought for a while and said, I do have some savings. You go and get it later. Sure enough, following Zhang Kai's words, the bandits found a lot of banknotes in the central room and Zhang Kai's east room. However, these banknotes were not as rich as what they had just obtained from the patriarch's house. Old bastard! The boss was angry. He looked at the black marks on the ground and laughed nastily. I lost a few lives here, and you're still so stingy. Forget it, I don't want your money, and I won't take you guys with me. He turned back and shouted, Brothers, chase these 5 people into the central room. Let's set a fire. I want to see if it can burn you all to death. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1066. When Zhang Kai and the others heard this, their expressions changed. 2 years ago, they had tested the power of the Jade Talisman in front of Zhang Xiaohua. At that time, they had used hose and wooden sticks to test it, but they had never used fire. Could this Jade Talisman withstand fire? Seeing that his threat was effective, the boss laughed sinisterly. I know that your son is a disciple of some misty school. It is normal for him to have these strange things in his hands. I am only after money. If you hand over the gold and silver, I will spare your lives. Zhang Kai looked at Guosufei, then at Zhang Xiaolong, and then at the sky. He gritted his teeth and said, Hero, since you have said it so clearly, Xiaolong, go, dig out those things for the heroes. What things? Guosufei blurted out. Lu Qian was also stunned. She blinked at her mother-in-law, thinking that this was also an act just like before. Who knew that Zhang Xiaolong pulled Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, come here. Xiaohua did not know what was going on. She followed Zhang Xiaolong to the corner of the wall. The bandits surrounding them had greedy eyes and quickly moved aside. The two of them walked to the corner of the wall and picked up 2 hoes. They turned around and went to the small house where Zhang Xiaohua was. The small house was by the wall, and there was no light at all. Therefore, the bandits did not even look at it. Seeing the 2 of them enter the small house, the bandits were happy. Needless to say, the things must be there. Lu Qian's face was ashen. She had been nervous all this time, but she insisted on not looking at the small house because her son, Zhang Byron, was inside. She had been trying her best to stay calm and put on an act to make the bandits pay attention to her and ensure her son's safety. Now that she saw Zhang Xiaolong going to the house, her heart was beating wildly. She shouted, Xiaolong, you. Guosufei was the same. She glared at Zhang Kai and was secretly worried about her Zhang Xiaohua. When Zhang Xiaolong and Ji Xiaohua entered the hut, Zhang Xiaolong immediately rushed to the Kong in the dark. He didn't care whether Zhang Xiaohua would be possessed by the devil or not. He pulled him down from the Kong and threw him into the broken cupboard at the corner of the Kong. Then he threw Byron into Zhang Xiaohua's arms. Little Black and Little Yellow waved their hands and moved them to their sides. Zhang Xiaolong also pulled a quilt over their heads. Little Black and Little Yellow opened their eyes, but when they saw that it was Zhang Xiaolong, they ignored him and closed their eyes again. Just as Zhang Xiaolong was done, the bandits' torches entered the hut. Someone lives in this house? The bandit looked around. I'm the one who lives here. Ji Xiaohua answered honestly.
Yes.
The bandit looked around and didn't suspect anything. After all, the bandit disguised as a beggar only found out that there were 5 people in the Zhang family. Is it underground? The boss entered the hut and looked down at the ground. He frowned. Yes, hero, but you must keep your promise. As long as you take away the treasures, you don't need our lives. Zhang Xiaolong asked as a matter of routine. The bandit boss also answered as a matter of routine. I'm a man of my word. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been sent here by the chief. You can rest assured. Sigh. Zhang Xiaolong sighed. He spat on his palms and weakly dug on the ground of the hut. You, call Xiaohua Ji. Hurry up. Seeing that Zhang Xiaolong was slow, the bandit instructed Xiaohua Ji. Xiaohua Ji was holding a hoe. She walked to Zhang Xiaolong's side and started digging. Although she didn't know what Zhang Xiaolong meant, she worked with Zhang Xiaolong on a daily basis. She could tell that Zhang Xiaolong didn't use any strength. Of course, she did her work lightly. After half a meal's time, they only managed to dig a shallow hole in the ground of the hut. The bandit boss saw this and wanted to threaten them. But looking at the gradually brightening sky, he waved his hand and said, You two come here and help them. The 2 bandits took over Zhang Xiaolong and Xiaohua Ji's hoes and started digging with all their might. Youngest, how's the situation in the village? The boss didn't forget to ask. Boss, don't worry. This village is no different from other villages. They are all timid. No one dares to make a sound. They can't wait for us to rob the Zhang family and leave quickly. Oh right, boss, I didn't see the Zhang family's little boy in the next house. The boss looked up and looked at Zhang Xiaolong. Where did your son go? Zhang Xiaolong rolled his eyes and didn't answer at all. The boss was annoyed. Just as he was about to scold him, he heard the sound of the hose in front of him hitting the wooden planks. Boss found it. The bandit said excitedly. Quick, come and help. The boss waved his hand and the bandits picked up all kinds of weapons and came over. They had already forgotten about asking about Zhang Byron. Not long after, a huge box was dug out of the ground by the bandits. Although these bandits were already prepared, when they saw the gold in the box, they were still stunned for a long time. Pa? The boss slapped the face of the bandit next to him. The bandit woke up with a start and held his face. Boss, what's wrong? Does it hurt? The boss asked. Of course, it hurts. Are you dreaming? Boss, can't you use your face to test it? The bandit mumbled and couldn't help but continue to stare at the gold. Quick, it's almost dawn. Don't let too many people find out. Quickly take all the gold. The boss confirmed that this was not a dream. He was so happy that his voice was trembling. He nagged. Everyone take some and divide it when we get to Shitsue Mountain. Damn it. If I knew that the Zhang family was so rich, I would have brought a big carriage over. I have lived for so many years, but I have never seen so much gold. I'm afraid that Zhang Xiaohu will take all the gold from the Misty School. When the bandits saw this, they all went forward and took the sacks to take away all the gold. Guosufei and Lu Qian, who were standing outside the door, were already in a daze. They did not know that their family was actually so rich. After the bandits finished dividing the gold, they turned to Zhang Kai and said, You old man, you really can pretend. You gave me so many silver notes, but this gold ingot can't even compare to it. Zhang Kai was anxious. He looked at the sky and smiled apologetically. Hero, please spare our lives. We have a poor life. We took so much gold, but we don't know how to spend it. Now that you have taken it, can we leave now? We promise that we won't report this to the authorities. Good plan. The boss grinned and looked at Lu Qian. I only said that I will spare your lives, but I didn't say. Lu Qian was so scared that she took a step back. Zhang Xiaolong quickly said, Hero, if I give you another box, can you be merciful? There's more. The bandits were stunned, and the greed in their eyes grew stronger. Quick, dig again, quickly dig. This time, the boss was smart. He didn't look for Zhang Xiaolong and Ji Xiaohua. Instead, he asked the two bandits to do it themselves. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, another chest was dug out. When it was opened, a dazzling array of jewelry dazzled everyone. Dig again. The boss waved his hand decisively. In the time it took to finish a meal, the remaining 3 chests were also dug out. Take it. The boss didn't have time to be surprised and immediately ordered. But the bandits didn't move. Nonsense. 3 boxes full of gold and 2 boxes full of jewels. Each box must be at least 2,000 pounds. 5 boxes would be 10,000 pounds. Not to mention whether the sacks could hold it. These bandits each had to take about 500 pounds of gold and jewels. How could they take it? In the past, they were afraid that there was too little gold and jewels. But now, they complained that there was too much gold and jewels. But if they only took 50 pounds, do you think they would be willing? The crazy bandits clenched their teeth. Looking at so much gold and jewels, they couldn't bear to part with them. At this time, the youngest came over and said, Boss, it seems that we were wrong. You were right. This Misty School's wealth is probably all here. You think, damn it, why didn't I bring a carriage? The boss was extremely regretful. Then, he rolled his eyes and gritted his teeth. How about this? Let's bury these boxes first. Why? The bandits didn't want to. How could they bear to bury them? Idiot, we can't take them away. Why don't we bury them? The boss said angrily, Quick. You, and you 3 quickly bury the boxes. The boss pointed and waved the weapon in his hand. He said fiercely, The rest of you, take your weapons and chase these 5 people to the central room. Dozens of bandits divided the work and chased Zhang Kai and the other 4 to the central room. Are you done? The boss asked. Yes. Good. Then prepare to set fire. The boss grinned. Set fire? The youngest asked curiously, Boss, you don't want that girl anymore? Nonsense, with so much gold and silver. Where can't you find a beautiful girl? Besides, the Misty School has all the gold, silver, and jewelry. Zhang Xiaohu must be someone in the Misty School. Although the Misty School is gone now, there's no guarantee that someone will come looking for her in the future. Why would I keep her around? Then let's just kill them all. Nonsense, aren't I killing them now? Can you kill them with a knife? Boss grumpily said. Let's set the Zhang family on fire first. First, we can burn them to death. Second, we can cover up the traces of our digging. After 2 days, when no one is paying attention to this place, we'll drive a carriage over and dig up the boxes underground. Brilliant! Everyone gave him a thumbs up. In the central room, everyone was burning with anxiety. Looking at the gradually brightening windowsill, they hoped that Zhang Xiaohua would wake up quickly, but they were also afraid that Zhang Xiaohua would be no match for the bandits when she woke up and would die for nothing. Hearing the vicious plan of the bandits of Shizue Mountain, everyone's heart sank. The house must be burned, and Zhang Xiaohua and Zhang Byron's lives would not be spared. With a bang, the bandits threw the torches in their hands on the pile of wheat straw next to the house. The fire immediately burned fiercely, and in a moment, the house was set ablaze. At this time, the sky was bright, and the sun shone into the house like fire. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.